Good evening, everybody. We'll call the meeting of the Macon County Board of Commissioners, September 12th, 2023 meeting to order. Glad you all are here, and we'll try to move through this thing as expeditiously as possible. First thing on the agenda is announcements. Any announcements, anybody? None being mentioned. We'll stand for a moment of silence, and then I'll ask Commissioner Antoine to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. Tonight we have 3 public hearings, and let's see, the first one will be administration grant application to provide assistance and support to public transportation in areas with populations of less than $50,000. Transit Director Darlene Asher. Welcome, Darlene.
That was 50,000 residents.
50, what did I say, dollars?
Yes.
That always gets my attention.
This is one of our normal grants that we apply for every year. It's a formula grant that's passed through the state. Macon County's formula amount for this coming year in FY25 is $230,000, $230,232. It is an 85-5-10 grant, which 85% federal, 5% state, and 10% county. The amount the county would be matching is $23,024.
Gentlemen? Any discussion on that?
The monies will come from the grant money from the business. So we had a percentage on this, right?
85, 5, 10%, is that right?
Yes.
And our 10%.
Or 10%?
Your 10% is $23,024.
Darlene, that 10%, the 23,024, that would be put into the 24-25 budget, or is this something that we have to pay for out of 23-24 budget?
No, this is 25 budget.
Okay, all right.
This is all next year's budget, not this year's.
And this is not for additional employees?
No.
This is,
No, this is our standard 5310 admin money.
okay, that's all the question.
Anything else? Do we act on these individually?
Yes.
All right, gentlemen, you've heard the presentation, you've seen the documentation, had time to study it. What's the pleasure of the board?
Am I wrong with the public hearing?
Has,
Yeah, has anybody signed up to
it's a,
speak?
Oh, yes. Has anybody signed up to speak for this particular item?
we have to close.
No, sir.
Nobody on this doc, okay? All right, gentlemen. Pardon?
Close the public hearing.
Okay, motion to close.
So moved, Chairman.
All in favor? All right, gentlemen. Pleasure of the board.
Make a motion we accept it as presented. Is it 5311 and 5310?
No, this is just 5311.
11,
We have to do them all three separately.
okay.
I second that motion.
All right, a motion second, further discussion? All in favor signify by raising your right hand and saying aye. Aye. All right, the second public hearing is a 5310 grant. It's an operating grant application to improve mobility for seniors and individuals with disabilities by removing barriers in transportation services.
In FY '23, Macon County Transit transported 11,160 trips under this grant. For FY '25, we are asking for $235,000 in funding. This grant is a 50-50 match, less the fares that we collect. The county share will be used, their match will come from our EdTap funds that comes through ROPE, and also the contracting agencies that we build. We use that to match this grant, so there should not be any county dollars.
Could you enlighten me on what EdTap is?
It's elderly and disabled, elderly and or disabled funding. It comes through the rural, regional area road funds that is allocated to the county every year. And a portion of it goes for general public, some goes to Work First, and some goes to EdTap. And we just use that to match this to increase our funding.
Make a motion at 5310. Pardon me?
One question on this now, on all of these grants, should the funding agency, the federal funding agency not fund, and do we pick up the tab locally?
I mean, we would be paying, yes, the county would be paying for trips.
I mean, then the federal government will be breaching this agreement we have
Yes.
with them at that point.
At that
So,
point,
I mean,
so.
we'll have to sort that out.
We're just applying for the grant right now, so. this
Yes,
is
for
just
next
to
year,
apply
all right.
For FY '25.
All right, a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved, Chairman.
Second.
Second.
All, any comment? All in favor, signify by raising your right hand. Unanimous. Thank you. All right, what's the pleasure of the board?
Chairman, I'd like to make a motion, we approve the 5310 operating grant application.
Second. Second.
Second. Further discussion? All in favor, signify by raising your right hand. All right. The combined capital grant.
The capital grant is for all of our capital projects. This grant comes with a schedule of replacement items for when we can replace them. For FY '25, Macon County Transit is asking to replace one minivan, one high-top van, and one 22-foot cutaway bus van, following the replacement schedule on these vehicles. All these vehicles met the life requirement on June 30th by having 100,000 or more miles on them. The minivan will be replaced with a high-top van. The reason we're asking to do that is so that we would have more seating and another lift van. This grant also includes the propane tanks for the vehicles to be outfitted with, the lettering, 6 new radios for vans. If you remember, we're getting 10 this year. We have a fleet of 16. We're gonna get the other 6 in '25. So that all of our radios are up to date, and 1 scanner, desktop scanner. This grant totals $388,194. It is an 80-20 grant, and the county's share would be $77,369.
And no one signed up to speak on this public hearing either? All right, gentlemen.
I have, Darlene, in this 23-24 budget, we included in your budget 6 new vehicles.
Yes, sir.
Where are we in that process?
They've been ordered.
They have been ordered.
They have. I had to wait to get the total agreement from the state. The day I got that agreement, I sent in the order forms.
So the 6 vehicles that we approved funding for has nothing to do with the ones that you're replacing in 25?
No, sir. No.
All right, gentlemen.
Make a motion be accepted as read. Darling.
Motion, I'll entertain a motion to close public hearing.
Okay, excuse me.
So moved, Chairman.
Second.
All in favor signify by raising your right hand. Thank you, gentlemen. All right, it's a pleasure of the board. On the capital grant application.
I make a motion be accepted as read.
I'll second that.
Further discussion? All in favor signify by raising your right hand. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Darlene.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Darlene.
All right, public comment period. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 people signed up, and kind of the little ground rule there, we'll have 5 minutes. Don't really run, well, we did run the clock, but, Steve Grissom?
Listen.
Grissom? Come on up, Steve. Welcome, Stephen.
Thank you. I'm new to Franklin and Macon County. I moved here into March not from Florida. I know y'all be all, I'm from Nashville, Tennessee. So you're getting someone a little bit, still south, but not much. But anyway, I work in solving for issues for human trafficking. I have a for-profit, not a non-profit, a for-profit company. And we are having an event. Ashley Chapman from Nashville will be speaking on Beyond Awareness. It's just not an awareness event, it's what we can do in Macon County to solve for these issues. And these issues are all intertwined. We have a homeless problem, we have a drug problem. All those are intertwined. The foster care system, they're all intertwined. When you have one, you have the other. So this event will be at Discovered Church. It's a Wednesday night, which is October 11th at 6 p.m. So I'd love for everybody to come to that event. You will not hear a better and more articulate speaker on any subject than this lady right here. If you've ever wondered who's the smartest in the room, it's her. On any subject, just about. So anyway, I would love to have everyone there, and please come. If you need a flyer that you can put in your business, just see me, and I'll be glad to get one to you. But I appreciate your listening, and appreciate your support.
Thank you, Steve. You got some of those with you?
I do.
How many you got?
Take what you need.
Just a couple hundred?
I don't have many, but there you go.
No.
Steve, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
What brought you to Franklin from Nashville?
You know, it was funny, is during COVID 3 years ago, around July 4th, we came up here to go whitewater rafting, and my daughter-in-law booked us a VRB home in the Featherstone development. And my wife, while everybody was getting ready, went up a gravel road in there up to the ridge top, and we found this lot, and we said, well, surely this isn't for sale, and it was, and we were gonna go back and forth, and then we just fell in love with Franklin and decided to stay here. So, into March, we moved here full time.
Glad you're here. Don't judge us by everybody in Macon County by Bill Vernon. So,
Oh, love Bill, good guy. This man right
Thank you,
here,
Steve.
this man right here took care of my loan.
welcome to Macon County. Thank you, sir. Mary Ann Ingram?
Thank you.
Come on up, Mary Ann.
Hi, everyone.
Hey.
I just want to say I'm glad that I am following Mr. Grissom because that was my subject tonight. But I also want to say thank you for what you're going to do for transportation because the senior citizens and the disabled need more help in getting around. Thank you. But I want to follow up that, what was it, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, that we had all of this kerfuffle about becoming a sanctuary county for the Second Amendment rights. And we still have people who come up and speak about that. Let's, instead of talking about a sanctuary city for Second Amendment rights, let's talk about if we could possibly create a resolution of a no tolerance for human trafficking in Macon County. That our county is going to make a huge statement that we are not going to put up with anyone who's going to be a commodity or a purchaser of human trafficking. So if we cut out those who want to use, then we've got the problem solved. And I know that drugs have the same issue. If you don't have any customers, you're not going to have a problem. And the same with human trafficking. If you don't have a customer, we don't have abuse. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Ann.
Mary Ann.
I got one. Yes, sir. I'm gonna put it up in my office.
Okay.
Tim Shaw? Welcome, Tim.
Hey, good afternoon. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. On behalf of Skate to 8 Franklin Skate Park Project and all the kids in Franklin and Macon County, thank you. Thank you for contributing to the skate park project. And thank you for partnering with the town of Franklin to get this done. Your cooperation and help in planning for the future of our community and the kids, it's appreciated and respected. Thank you.
Real quick, Tim. Oh, go ahead.
No, that's just saying thank you.
And I talked with Mayor Horton about this too, is we got 2 porta-johns sitting there now. You know, these kids are over there and spectators that are gonna be observing. When it's time to use the restroom, they got a place to go to the bathroom. And let's don't stop with just the park. I like what it's done. And somebody knocked the sign down the other day and it
Wind, actually, it was a microburst came through and it just blew it over. The ground's soft, very soft. like that.
Okay.
Well, they went up today and did a.
Put it back in,
little
good.
pounding
And it's
in
pretty good signage. But there needs, let's don't stop with just the park. We're gonna have restrooms in that somehow.
We're getting benches and some entry columns built by the LBJ Job Corps here within the next month. They're gonna contribute other projects also, like a graffiti wall.
So,
And Amy Owens has a plan for that park, and it's in the design phase right now. So they're actually just picking out colors and design styles like that. I had a contribution from a business owner and a philanthropist here in town today that's gonna offer up $5,000. He's gonna buy a sunshade picnic table that has solar panels in it, so that way the kids or the parents can plug in their tablets, and some of those will have lights in. You can even get ones with cameras that can link to 911 dispatch so they can keep an eye on the area. And some of them will actually have little touch pads, so when the park is developed, you can touch and see what the activities are going on in the park at any given time, so.
what's your feedback from the skaters?
Oh, they all love it. We've had, and one of the goals was to have people from out of town come, and we've had a lot of skaters from out of town because they heard about this great park and they've come to try it out for themselves, and they've been here repeatedly. So when those people come into town, into our county, they buy gas, they buy food, they buy other things, and so it's a win-win so far.
Economic development.
Yep.
Works very well.
You're a big part of this. We appreciate you.
All right.
And keep us in the loop. Don't be afraid to come back.
Okay, will do. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Tim. Mark Camara?
Thanks, sir.
Welcome.
I'm here to be very brief. I just handed, in the interest of the audience, the time of the audience, I have just handed each one of our commissioners a document, which you may read, after the meeting, of course, or at your time, whenever you wish, of course. I want to remind keep reminding myself and everybody in this room that our First Amendment of our state constitution boldly talks about our right to the fruits of our labor. I've been a property owner here in Macon County since 1995. My mother bought up here in 1984, and I was coming up here, went to Helen's Barn as a child, you know, and I've been coming up here for a long time. In any event, I have not been able to get road or water to my property for a quarter of a century. I've been paying taxes on my taxes, and I've been paying association fees for a quarter of a century. And I'm into 5 years of litigation attempting to get to my property to enjoy the rights that I should have here as a taxpayer and enjoy the rights of the fruits of my labor. The justice system has so far failed me. I don't know if I've ever been through anything as lengthy and exasperating and as expensive in my entire life as what I've been through here, trying to get what I see everybody else have. And I invite you gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, to read my document, but in the interest of time of the audience, I'll now sit down.
Thank you. Contact information, everything's in there.
Perhaps, I've got another minute here. In the interest of a greater audience, it might be good if it's possible for me to break off with one or more commissioners at some later date, which you can certainly arrange, and to go over this. It's more than something I can reveal here in a short amount of time. It's become, over such a long period of time, more of a bit of a saga. And perhaps in the interest of the time of everyone here in our government, I could help hopefully break off with one or more of you at a later time.
Is your email for sure? Is your email in here?
Yes, it is. It is. Thanks, sir.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any comments tonight? If not, we'll call the public comment period closed and pass these down to the clerk, please. Thank you all for coming and speaking. Any addition to the agenda? Well, we better get through this thing tonight, folks. Adjustments to an approval?
Mr. Chairman, if we could, on old business, item 9F, if we could slide that down to the consent agenda. That was actually approved at the last meeting, subject to attorney making the desired changes. Our attorney has since made those changes. This document's actually been signed and sent off following that satisfactory approval by our attorney, but we'll just slide it down here on the consent agenda and approve it again.
Good deal. Any other adjustments?
Chairman, I make a motion, we approve the agenda.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, signify by raising your right hand. Thank you, gentlemen. Reports and presentations. Macon County Data Card and the 2023 Child Health Report Card. North Carolina Child Director of Community Engagement, Mr. Kevin Stalling. Welcome, Kevin.
Thank you. And I know y'all say y'all moving right along, so I don't want to be thinking y'all process. Thank you for, and do all of y'all have? Yes.
Yes.
Most definitely. Thank you for giving us the pleasure to be with y'all this afternoon. Good afternoon, commissioners. My name is Kelvin Stallings, and I am the Director of Community Engagement at NC Child. Here with me today is Michael Cooper, who is our Senior Director of Advocacy, and we will be presenting to this body our research data on the state of child welfare here in Macon County. Our work consists of advocacy, community engagement, and research, and that includes every year putting together a county data card that we release that we will be presenting tonight. We organize it in 5 areas, which is a strong start, family economic security, nurturing homes and communities, high quality education, and health and wellness. And just for a quick overview, the strong start benchmark tracks prenatal and birth health. The family economic security portion tracks child poverty and household well-being. Nurturing homes and communities portion focuses on youth behaviors and welfare. high-quality education assesses literacy, graduation, and higher education, and the health and wellness benchmark evaluates insurance coverage and mortality rates. So now I will pass it over to my colleague, Michael Cooper, for a more in-depth, brief report.
We'll make it brief, since
brief.
y'all are ahead of schedule. So normally we do this stuff online, we present it, we do a webinar, but we figured we need to start getting out, going to the public, particularly Western North Carolina. I'm from Wilkes, so I understand a lot of people feel like North Carolina ends at I-77, or definitely the city of Asheville. So I think it's important for us to come out here, present this information, make y'all feel like you're a part of this conversation. So you have this information here. This is 2021 statistics. It's the latest census data and North Carolina state government information broken down by issue. And so a lot of this helpful, it's good to see. A couple of things stood out. During the pandemic, because a lot of the money that was coming out and investments and things like that, you saw economic changes, you saw economic improvements. So median family income, Macon County, was up to $48,000, up from $45,000 the year before. This was 2021. The number of children in households that are food insecure declined from 2019 from 20% to 14.8%. So you saw improvement there. So several of these issues improved. You look at high quality education, you saw an improvement in the number of kids who were reading a proficient, 49% compared to 47%. There was an outlier of a statistic that was getting worse though, and that was children who were determined to be abused, neglected, dependent. This is not surprising. The disruptions of the pandemic, a lot of children who were at home, who were isolated, dealing with issues at home. So we saw in Macon County, in 2021, there was a 21 young people per 1,000 were designated delinquent, and this was up from 6.9% the year before, and tripled. And this is compared to the state number, which is 17.5%. So Macon County had been doing better. Numbers from the pandemic got worse. Also, children assessed for abuse or neglect per 1,000. You saw an increase up to 61.2 per 1,000. Previously, the year before, 55.3. And this is higher than the state number, which is 43.8. So if there are outliers, Macon County compared to the rest of the state, in previous years, it is in these children who are being assessed for being neglected, abused, dependent, things like that. And so that's something to pay attention to, see if those trends continue, and talk to folks in the juvenile justice system and the school system. There was a really impressive, though, statistic. I wanted to point that out. You see high school students graduating on time. You see that number 95% compared to what we've seen before, 81.7%. 95 is the highest number we can have in the state. They actually don't look at it above that. Once they get to 95%, they don't record it. So y'all have the highest number that you can have in terms of the graduation rate in the state. Really impressive, and I think that's pretty common in a lot of areas in Western North Carolina where we do a good job in the K through 12 education system, preparing young people, sending them off to college. We have a challenge of getting them to come back and to find housing and employment, things like that. But graduation rate, doing very well. So real quick, the other document we have in there, the 2023 Child Health Report Card. And the thing that really stood out to us, there's some interesting issues in here. Y'all, if you have time, welcome to go through it. One thing concerning to us, we're hearing, as we hear about these problems in the school system, we grade an F, so we rate these, A through F. These kind of look like my grades with a few Fs on here. But the school nurse ratio, 1 to 1,000, and the school counselor ratio, 1 to about 300. We rate that an F. That is something that we want to see improvement on as kids are dealing with these issues. We want to see them get more access to guidance counselors and to nurses and things like that. But over here, the thing that really stood out to us is on mental health. Because you see above that, there's actually been improvement in the number of young people who are smoking. This has gone down, this has declined. You see the number of young people using electronic vaping products. This has declined significantly, it's down across the board. The number of young people who are drinking has declined. So they're not doing those things like they used to do. Problem is, the challenge now is mental health. And so our mental health statistics, this really stood out. Suicide is now the leading cause of death for children aged 10 to 14 in North Carolina. 1 in 5 North Carolina high school students have reported seriously considering attempting suicide. In 2021, that was up from 16% in 2017. 1 in 10 reported actually making an attempt at suicide. And then we saw more than 1 in 10 children in North Carolina aged 3 to 17 had a diagnosis of depression or anxiety, which was a 49% increase from 2016. So, I mean, it's basically, the numbers are skyrocketing. There's no one reason for that. Pandemic, disruptions, isolation, being at home, social media, and the smartphones are a big cause of this too. I mean, there's a lot of factors that are going into it, and that means there's not going to be one easy solution to any of this. Some of these things are beyond our control. Some of these things we can affect, whether that's putting money into treatment, but also after-school programs, getting kids out of the house, getting them out, doing things in the community, giving them purpose and motivation and things like that. So really encourage, be thinking about this stuff, because that's the thing that is really an alarm right now. An emergency are these youth mental health statistics. So anything we can do locally to get folks, to get young people, make them feel like they have a voice and people are listening to them and have things to do that are positive. They're not doing the illegal, illicit behavior like they used to. The problem is they're at home, they're scrolling through social media, they're comparing themselves to one another, and they're feeling depressed doing this stuff. So we've got to find a way to address that and to do better about it. But all in all, Macon County doing pretty well. Some of these education statistics are impressive, and so if we can do stuff about young people dealing with mental health, I think we're going to be all right. So thank y'all for what you do. Let's stay in touch. We'd always love to come back out and do stuff here locally. But y'all get to see this information before we release it next week. So we wanted to be out here and be available to y'all.
Did you say that you noticed that the numbers for the suicide rates went up since the pandemic?
Yeah, absolutely.
Chairman of the Board of Education right behind you, and superintendent right there. Those two fellows there.
Yeah, thank you for what y'all do. But absolutely, thank you for what you do, and yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, gentlemen. Old business? Continued discussion on the fire department contracts. Mr. Warren Kay, VMS Director. Welcome, Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So last month, I brought before you some draft contracts, a rural version and a municipal version of some revised contracts with some changes that we made in there for the fire departments. We went over a lot of the highlights of those and why we put some of those in there. So I think now it'd probably be prudent for me to take questions, comments, or concerns from you all. And then when we finish that, we can talk about what our next step would be with this. Is there anything I can explain any better on the documents that you had last week?
They're lengthy.
They were, yes.
John?
No, I think reviewing those contracts for the fire departments in Macon County, with them being a state agency, it sort of brings these contracts, bring the fire departments back to the taxpayers that's funding this, and they will be more open to Macon County and the taxpayers. And I like the contracts. I think you guys did a great job, and I hope the fire departments are satisfied.
Could be shared with.
We've had a couple meetings with the Fire and Rescue Commission, and Dustin Pendergrass is here. He's actually the chair of the Fire and Rescue Commission, and gave them opportunities to provide input and talk to us. The only concern I have had brought to me, which was a third-party concern, had to do with Section 7 and the assets, as far as the assets being returned to the successor. If a department were to go out of business, to make sure that the assets of the existing department went to whomever succeeded that department. And if you remember, we talked about that. The reason we did that was to make sure that, and pick a district, that the taxpayers in that district weren't buying equipment and then all of a sudden, maybe by no fault of their own, the fire department ceased to exist. And then because the North Carolina nonprofit statutes, that's how that property would have to be disposed of. It doesn't necessarily say it has to stay in that area. So we wanted to put some sort of provision in there to try and make sure that the stuff those folks had bought in that area stayed in that area. Now, that gets a little complicated, and Eric and I went over some thoughts that, you may have departments, and it says equipment and assets owned by the department. It gets a little trickier because you may have a department that leases a building. They may have a building on leased property. We skipped that because those would have to be an individual thing dealt with on an individual basis. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the stuff that's been purchased there, to hopefully stay there to help the people that paid for it in the first place.
Looks good. That was a big concern I had, but I feel good.
And these contracts are actually year to year. It's not a long-term contract. They can be reviewed. And if you would, in or out, if you would explain.
Yeah, the contracts have an 8-month termination to them, and they renew automatically fiscal year to fiscal year. But at any time, you can say, okay, we want to redo this. We're gonna offer the termination. That gives them 8 months to go through the process, for us to review stuff. The 8 month is usually, the reason we picked 8 months was a little odd. That's typically the time frame that if we have a department that has an operational deficiency, that's the time frame that North Carolina will usually give them to say, okay, you've got a certain time that you've got to get your affairs in order. That's why we did the 8 month. That's why it's always been in there as 8 months, so that ties with the problems that some of them could have with the state. So that's where the 8 months comes from. So to answer your question, yes, at any time you can say, okay, 8 months from today, we're going to stop and do another. So at any time. Now we have, if you look back, it has been a long time since we've done these. These are 2014 contracts, and we really should have done them a long time ago. So I don't know that I want to do one every year, but I'd say probably every 5 years or so, we ought to at least look at them, because what happens with this one, some of the state standards had changed. So we needed to update them because the state stuff had changed, and that's what ours matches.
Perfect.
Anything else, gentlemen?
Appreciate what you do, Warren.
And thank the fire departments. I mean, they offer a great service to this county and the property owners and the citizens and the tourists and everybody else that comes to this county. And they're very well appreciated.
So what I think our next step should be, and I don't want to sound like an attorney, but no offense.
You don't look like one.
Our old contract has a termination clause in it for 8 months. So and correct me if I'm wrong, seriously here, I think the proper procedure for y'all to do would be to terminate the existing contracts with the fire departments and approve the new contracts. That termination is 8 months from today. So that gives them, from today, 8 months for the fire departments to take the contracts back to their boards, to go through their process, to get the signatures in order, and get it back to us. So the termination would be 8 months from today. Now, Town of Franklin has already taken the draft and has already put it through their legal process, and they've already signed theirs. So theirs will be effective immediately as soon as you sign it. Town of Highlands will probably put theirs through their attorney process. The rural departments will probably go through their own process, but that'll give them that 8 month period in there, up to 8 months, to go through the process, get it signed, get it back to us, and the new one would be effective whenever they sign it, when we both sign it at the same time, correct?
So not necessarily 8 months, it's when the
Right.
document is
If they sign
signed.
it next month, then it's effective next month. And I think that's the cleanest way for us to meet the intent of the current contract and terminate the existing, to make sure we follow all the rules of the contract.
Public hearings are not a necessity here. Public hearings,
No, but I think you are looking for a motion and
Yeah,
a decision, right?
That's correct, if the board's ready.
Eric, you feel pretty good about this?
Yeah.
And I guess you'll need 2 motions, right? One to terminate, one to approve? That sound
It's
good?
probably a good idea, yes, sir.
So I make a motion that Macon County terminate the current contract as of
8 months from today.
8 months from now, as recommended by Mr. Warren Cable.
Second.
Okay, gentlemen, discussion? We've been discussing. All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by raising your right hand. That's record reflected as unanimous. That's one.
Yeah, we need to.
Yeah, we're
gotta
without
have
a
one more.
contract now.
We gotta have one more.
We're without a contract.
Josh, jump on.
I'd like to make a motion, we adopt the new contract as presented by Mr. Warren Cable between Macon County and our local fire departments.
And note that there are 2 different contracts for municipal and rural fire departments, so there's 2 different contracts. I second that motion.
And in essence, they're working without a contract until they approve it.
No, because the other one is still good until 8 months from today. Your termination is good for 8 months.
Okay. All right, gentlemen, motion and a second. Discussion. All in favor, signify by raising your right hand. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Warren. You can take a break now. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Baker.
Okay, still under old business, 9B, Franklin High School, main campus construction documents. County Manager Derek Rowland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and we're fortunate enough tonight to have Mr. Paul Boney and his team with LS3P here providing architectural services for us at Franklin High School. And I think they're here to tell you tonight that we're ready to move forward into the construction documents phase of this project at the high school. And Mr. Boney, if you would like to add anything to that, we're glad to have you here. Appreciate your time.
Well, thank you, Derek, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, architects talk in a different language sometimes, and I just wanted to clarify some things about that language. And so we've completed schematic design on this thing. That's where we bring a lot of ideas together. That's where we assimilate those ideas, and we begin to put all that on paper. We look at the budgets, we look at the size of the thing, we get public comments, we get comments from y'all, and we begin to design the design process with that. So after the schematic design was over, we had a meeting, a public meeting with the school board and the commissioners in the auditorium over at the high school. And then we took, and I remember meeting John there and appreciated his comments about the thing. So once schematics is over, then we go into the next phase, which is design development. And design development is a big term for getting the engineers and a lot of people involved in this thing that work behind the scenes for us. And it's taken that engineering one step further. I know we had lots of conversations with Mr. Higdon about the civil work and the site plan and that type of thing. So the drawings become more and more detailed. And then once we're done with design development, there is a comment period that we have that we specifically look at, and one is for public comments. And so now that we're through with design development and we have enough information to people to look at, because you can't just, you need something for people to look at and to react. And so those drawings have now been completed. I saw a picture of them walking down the hall with these rolls of drawings that must be this big, okay? And so those are going to get submitted to the commissioners, to the school board, to the Division of School Planning, to the insurance department, and to a million lettered agencies that have to do with the site. The most important thing that we will do with those design development drawings is we will have a series of public hearings so that we can go back to the people, show them how we reacted to their initial comments when we had that public meeting, and then get specific input. And we can do that in a variety of ways. I think the most effective way is for us to pick a place and say, we're gonna be there all afternoon. And not have some super duper high performance presentation, but have the drawings laid out on the table and the sketches that we have of what this thing's gonna look like, and present it to anybody who walks in the room. And I'll stay there all day, I'll stay there all night, and talk with whoever comes, and whoever wants to come, because we want that input from the public on this project. And so now we have enough information for them to actually look at something, and we will then compile everybody from the commissioners. Derek, if y'all have comments about it, then y'all write them down. And these two are gonna go through each one of those comments and will respond to those comments. So it's not like these comments just go into this black hole somewhere. And we have to respond to school planning, and we have to respond to the insurance department in order for them to issue a letter that says we're able to go to the next phase. So what we're asking for tonight is to go to that next phase and to have that funding in place. Otherwise, when we get all those comments back, then we're under contract to just put our pencil down and wait. And we believe that it's in the best interest of the project to have that funding in place. And then once we get all those comments, we do all that stuff, we're able to move forward and continue to work. So the construction documents phase will include the drawings necessary for us to send this thing out for bids at the appropriate time when the commissioners decide how the funding's going to be in place and what they're going to do with the funding at that point, but at least we're ready. Two things are important about that. One is up until about 4 o'clock this afternoon, the House and the Senate were going to pass a budget on Thursday. That will no longer happen. Okay, everybody is gone home. They cannot come to grips with certain issues that I won't get into. I wasn't there, I don't know, but all I know is they're going home. And I'm sure you're gonna hear a lot about that. And then Speaker Moore says he's gonna bring them back on Monday, and they would schedule votes for next week. That's what they said last week. So so how does that affect y'all? I mean, I'm sure y'all have other things, but how it affects y'all is that the $60 million we're trying to get in grant funding is tied up in the budget. And it will not, none of the grants will go forward until they pass that budget. And then we have to get in line for the grants, and hopefully we would be successful this year, which would go a long way to paying for this project. So that's how, first of all, the budget affects you, plus a million, employee raises, teachers raises, a whole bunch of stuff in the budget. So we'll know next week, hopefully, about that budget. So we would like to move ahead with the construction documents, and we would like to move ahead with scheduling the public hearings. And that's something that all of y'all can come to and be involved with. We'd love for you to, and the school board the same way. And so I'm here tonight to answer any questions. If there's anybody in the audience that wants to talk to me or ask me any questions, I'll stay here all night and talk to them. So I'm available. Yes, sir.
Since we have the two leaders, when is your next work day? Isn't it October, early October?
I'm sorry, our next meeting day?
No, work day, teacher work day.
I
think it's October the 20th.
October 20th. And that is a holiday or work day? Work day?
It's a work day.
And which means that your teachers would be available, and if you went to the Franklin High School library, that space would be available for people to come onto the campus and do what he's talking about, visit all day like that, and that's a larger space.
Yeah, well, we'll work all that out with them.
But it's the 20th,
Okay.
too
We'll
far
see.
up the road.
Yeah, 20th of October.
Right.
Yeah, so let us work with them and we'll put that together, but that may be something that I just don't want to speak for them.
I think my concern is for people to come, where are you gonna have this presentation at? Or is that trying to get to a facility or something to have that?
Yeah.
If you had it on the Franklin High School campus, you've got the message right there. Then if you got a work day, you have teachers right there. Then the people from the community can come to the Franklin High School campus.
And what was the date again?
20th.
October 20th. I would suggest that we have a public hearing on October 20th at the Franklin High School, beginning at noon or whenever they want to, and going, beginning at 10 o'clock in the morning and going until whenever, a lot of people can't be there during the day, and so we'd have that at night. It's a Friday night, and so maybe there's a football game that night we can go to. But
So the 30th is on a Friday?
so the 20th is on a
I
Friday.
mean, the 20th.
Okay, so let me just tell you, the 20th is on a Friday.
You guys work out a date.
That's what I'm trying to get to, but
Yeah.
if he wants to if he wants us to announce it, we're happy to do it on the 20th.
You phrased that as a public hearing, you're saying a public presentation.
I'm just saying, I'm gonna be there with all these drawings, and I'd love to have anybody who wants to come, because I think the most important thing is for them to flip through the stack of drawings and be able to acclimate themselves, rather than these slick presentations that we put up there.
And
The
we had
community
that-
building would be a good place.
Where,
Yeah, we had that today, the flip through.
yeah, what was that, wasn't that helpful for y'all?
Can I ask just for a moment, gentlemen? And I'm not trying to rude. The 20th, we also have ACT testing. So, we have to have that open, that's not open at the library, doesn't interfere with the test itself taking place, correct?
Here's what I would
We should be
suggest.
all right on that day, is that right? Okay.
Here's what I would suggest, is that you allow us to work with the school board to find a suitable place and time and date. And we'll notify you, but it'll be on or around, it won't be in December, it's gonna be in October, so that we move forward with having those public comments, because it's so important to us to have that input.
A couple small things. So first off, I feel really good to hear you want to engage the public. I think that's been one of my largest concerns. Myself and Mr. Shields and Ms. Breeden and Ms. Hillary have all been involved in this process, and I feel like the rest of this board, although you have made accommodations to meet with them, they haven't been through the ins and outs like we have.
True.
It being 2023 and kicking around some other information, a lot of people can't see plans, they can't read plans. If they're as big as you're talking, can you set up some kind of virtual tour, walkthrough, goggles? And I really want to, let all the media, all the papers, our board, the school board, and I'd prefer it to be a little bit informal. That way people feel like they're welcome there. They don't feel like it's a big, high-pressure meeting where they have to walk in front of 10 elected officials and state their case. I'd like it to be more personalized, and I think that's my main concern, is public engagement, because I think a lot of the public are excited, but I think they need to feel for themselves that this is, for the future as well.
Josh, they need to be involved.
I agree.
They need to feel like they've had a part in this, because it is their school. It is not, a project like this is a building until you put students in it and becomes a school. It's just a building. It's another building in the county. But when you put those students in there, it becomes a living, breathing school and somewhere where people really relate to. Sometimes that's the safest place one of those kids had. You heard 3 people wander up here talking about how the problems that we have with that and how this building can help that in moving forward with those things. And also the ADA thing that you've got out there, we're gonna fix it. And this is the way to fix the ADA problem on that campus. This is the way. And so, you know, I agree with you, Josh, and these two are the gee whiz people. You know, they've got the goggles and they've got all the.
You guys feel good about that? Something virtual?
Absolutely.
And the last thing, I want to go on record because I want to keep the project moving along, all
Yes,
right?
sir.
But I don't want to go ahead and approve the funds for the construction documents and that mean that this design development sticks. So I want to make sure that public involvement is heard and it's applied. And so although I know how the funding mechanism works, it's important to keep that ball rolling. I just want to make sure we have a blessing from the school board, blessing from the public, blessing from the, you know, the CTE, the departments, that it's adequate.
Let me tell you how that works. And there's certain safeguards to make sure that exactly what you're saying happens.
Okay.
And so we have to respond and get a response back to school planning that says, yes, design development is approved. We can't go forward without that. We can't go forward without y'all's comments and us responding back to them or the school board. But most importantly, and y'all are gonna hear this more than we are, is the public comments. And did we listen? Did we do our job and did we listen to them? And did we do our job and put those comments into the documents as we heard them? And you know, I mean, if you have a public hearing, we had a public hearing that said, I want a swimming pool. You know, and so, well, we can't give you a swimming pool. Then they get mad at me and because they don't get a swimming pool. But if they're legitimate type comments, we really listen and we want to make sure that, well, you could give them a swimming pool, but I can't, you know. And so I just want those public comments are very important to us, and we cannot move forward with construction documents until all of those comments have been incorporated into the documents and responded to. We can't move forward.
I feel good about that. And last thing, would you feel comfortable if we made this motion, if I did, whoever, contingent upon public involvement and school board approval?
Sure.
Are you okay with that?
Yeah, normally we would get school board approval before we would move into construction. I mean, that's just the way we do it.
I just want to make sure, like I said, I want to make sure that we don't approve it without their blessing.
Oh, no.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, obviously, you're expressing some of my concerns, Josh, in terms of, I think there's another sector that I want to talk about, which is, of course, is our teachers. I'm glad that we have, I like Gary's idea, they're the ones that's going to be there on a day-to-day basis, and they're the experts, as far as I'm sorry, they're the experts on educating our children. So I think we have a kind of a twofer where we're going to get input from both of them, shall we say. I'm excited about this project, so I don't want to do anything that would cause delays. I don't think any of us really want to do that. However, I'm not the one that has to answer to the public about the monies. You guys are. So I think you're exactly right. We, as a board, obviously want to see the public comment and all those other things be part of the path that as we move forward to make sure we're listening to the stakeholders. I've heard Mr. Sherrill talk about that. I think he takes it very, very seriously about our citizens and our stakeholders. Obviously, to me, this is one of the most important things we've had going on in the school system since I've been on the board. I've been on the board for 14 years. So we have to do this right, guys. It has to be done where the people feel involved, the community feels involved. And so hearing Mr. Mullins and I talk about that being part of the process is very, very reassuring. We appreciate y'all allowing the Board of Education, the school board, to be part of the process. We're here, whatever you ask us. We're open to anything that y'all feel like we need to do. I pledge that we're going to do that. We feel very comfortable with our liaison committee. We have two very dedicated people, Deidre Breeden and Hillary Wilkes, have worked very closely, and I think you've been part of that, so you understand. They're committed to doing what's right for our children. So we love the fact that y'all are opening up and looking for us to be part of this process. We value that. We'll do anything we can, and I'm glad to hear the stuff we heard tonight about the most important factor, which was, of course, the involvement. So I'll shut up now.
So are we able to go to the public comments without approving this, or does this have to be approved first?
No, I mean, the normal process would be, we go and we do these public hearings and we get all the comments back on design development. We write those down and we specifically digest those into comments. We respond to those comments. We show which ones we said yes to and which ones all of us will come back and the liaison committee will talk about those comments. And we then approve it. And then only when the liaison committee and the Board of Education and the commissioners, that would be the kind of pecking order here, is the liaison committee approves design development. And all those comments have been resolved. It goes to the school board, it comes back to the commissioners, and then you all approve it, and then this motion kicks in. But that way we know we're moving forward with the thing. So we're happy with that amendment. You know, I mean, it's normally how it works anyway.
Mr. Boney, are we in this process and the phase that we're in for design and stuff, are we far enough along for the state to recognize us for this grant?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so are you coming to this board tonight seeking more funds? Or are you coming here to tell us what the next process is before you need more funds?
No,
No,
no.
you're not coming here for more funds?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
We're coming, let me explain. Well, your question kind of was a leading question, and so I don't really do leading questions.
Okay.
So first of all, let's break down the question.
Okay.
The question is, are we here to get more funding for the design process? The answer is yes.
Okay.
The second part of your question is that going to have anything to do with the grant? And my feeling is, I believe yes.
And why would you think that?
Because what they're looking for is grants, to give people grants where you've got a significant amount of skin in the game. And they're giving grants to all these people, and they're not going to build a school for 3 years because they are starting from ground zero. And you are, as soon as they give you that grant, then you're ready to go. If you don't do that, then you're 6 months waiting, once you've gotten the grant, to do that. I can't tell them we're ready to go.
But in that grant, we have 2 years to break ground, is that correct?
I don't remember, but I'm assuming you're correct.
So why, and I'm just trying to get the logic here as to why we have all talked about the fact that Macon County taxpayers can't pay for this high school without this grant. So why would we throw more money at this until we know whether or not we have a grant?
Because you are at an inflation rate of between 1% and 0.5% per month. If you wait, you are going to be another 6-8 months, which is how long it's going to take them to draw it, on $120 million. So you can figure out the math. That's what I'm trying to avoid by moving this thing forward, is having another $10 million in interest. I mean, not interest, but in inflation.
And since I've been on this board, we've put things out for bid, and we're lucky to get a bid, which tells me that these contractors are not hungry. If these contractors are hungry, you're gonna get bids. and everything that we're dealing with is skyrocketing. What, I'm trying to grasp what you know that can guarantee me that these things are gonna go up 0.5% or 1%. I mean, the economy and this stuff can't keep going. And the bids that we have received for county projects have been double of what we were expecting. We've put them on hold. And you're talking about including the general public. There's no better way in the world to include the general public in the referendum.
Well, Mr. Sherrill, that is obviously out of my purview of,
I understand.
Being able to advise you one way or the other.
Right.
We do bond issues, we do general, Derek can tell you the bunch of ways to finance a project. We've done all of them, and we can do all of them, and we're gonna support you in whatever you decide. But this board would make that decision. We don't get to make
Right,
that
I
decision.
understand.
And so, that's certainly one idea. And that's something that certainly could be done. And let the people, decide if that's what you all wanna do.
Well,
Let them vote it up or down. I don't know.
We've talked numbers, you're talking about inflation,
Yeah,
cost of building materials, supply, all this stuff that goes with dictating what the final cost will be.
yes, sir.
We started out at 120, 118 million, and we flopped around. And one thing on your presentation, your projected budget, is that all inclusive? That's on, under Exhibit A. Here you go.
I don't know what you.
I know.
What document are you looking at,
Scope
Mr.
of
Chair?
services,
Oh,
revised September 7th, 2023.
Would
let me
be
see it.
page, right here, well, the design fee, I underlined it, because you said you would work for nothing, but the projected budget there is, that's just a number. We can see a lot of numbers,
Yeah.
and I try to log them in my brain. What does that number represent?
And 91 million?
The 91 million
Projected
is the projected budget at that point, at that time.
of what?
That's the budget at that time.
That's September of 2023.
Yeah, but at the same time, we are gonna have a cost estimate and design development and update all those numbers for you, because that number doesn't, it just can't stay the same as it was 4 years ago.
That budget's actually was a part of the advanced planning study.
Yeah,
It's pretty dated.
so all of that, in the last couple of years, we've had inflation of some 30% documented by different agencies. And so if you take that 91 million and make it 30% more, you get to 120. And so it's gonna be in today's dollars, and that's why I keep trying to move this thing up as far as you can, because that inflation just eats up a lot of classroom space.
Hopefully that turns around at some point.
Well, I keep hoping, and I keep thinking
pray.
it is,
Yeah.
and everybody keeps telling me it is, but I don't see it. And I haven't seen it so far in our other work, that it's just not, and usually what these prices do is they go, and they go up and they go up, and then they level off. And then they go up and they go up. If you look historically at what it's done over the last 30 years, that's what school prices have done. And we're doing the best we can do. And this is not, we're not loading the school up with a bunch of extras and a bunch of stuff. This is a very basic building.
And I'd hope to hear something. I'd hope to have been able to talk with our Raleigh folks this week, but it's...
I'd call him tonight on his way home. Be interesting.
What's the damage in pausing this for a month or two till we get a little more solid on this state budget? You're asking tonight for 1.67 million? Is that the number?
1666565.
To continue the design and take it to the construction document phase.
Yeah.
if we pause it, does that affect the grant?
Yes.
I think it will. Because I can't tell them, yeah, we're doing it, but if they don't pass the budget for another month.
But
Are they interviewing you during this, you're saying you can't tell them, are they interviewing you for the grant? Who would?
Here's what happens with a grant. I write it, and y'all sign it. And then we have input from Derek and the school board and the liaison committee about what goes into the grant, because we're gonna talk about a number of things that are advantageous to this project. And that's what we're trying to do. And one of them would be, we're actually working on the working drawings so that we can bid this thing when they get the grant settled. So that's the only reason I bring this to you. If y'all wanna put it off a month, that's fine. I mean, that's fine. Y'all vote it up or down. But I'd prefer for you to move it so I can tell these people what to do. Otherwise, we're out looking for some, I don't know. It's a way to,
You're at a standstill?
when we get through with the design development and we get all the comments and we do all that stuff, we are at a standstill. We would be working on something else. No more public, no more, we just can't do that if you're not gonna pay it.
go ahead.
In my opinion, if we stop tonight, it's gone. Trying to restart it again. The time and energy that we put in to keep this ball rolling, we've spent a tremendous amount of money and time. School board here. I really think the piece that we need to keep moving is your public comment, period. I was in the meeting today when we flipped the charts. That was good, but it was minimum people, 6. We need to go public and find some kind of digital piece that you can share with the public like we did in the Fine Arts Center. If you bring in people, let's just say at the high school to go to the library or the community center, it's, you condense the interaction of the people. We're gonna have to take this to the people and make it big enough for them to see. If we end up, and I think the people out there will energize us. When you see this, will energize us. Your shield's already energized, but they will energize us to continue this project. But I think it has to be done, if you say during the daytime, you won't hit enough people.
That said, we would be there anytime anybody wanted us to.
And I think that nighttime piece that we did at the Fine Arts Center was very important. I would want to see that leave the area.
We do this a lot.
Right.
Mr. Boney, didn't this board sign an agreement that, to send to the state that if we got this grant, this board was ready to move forward with this new school? Didn't we, wasn't that a request from this board?
When was that made?
A few months ago, because the state said that we're not going to entertain an application unless we are dead set on we're going to do this school. And at that same time, we talked about, if we don't get this grant, we can't afford this project. That's the conversation we had. And so my question to you is, if the state will eventually pass this budget, I hope, and I'm prepared to delay this thing until we find out what the state says and let you do what you can do up until the point of your funding. If we're talking a month, we're talking a month and a half. But I'm not interested in throwing more money at this thing without, because I was hopeful before you came to this board that we would have some kind of information back from the state about this grant. And so at this time, Chairman, I'll make a motion to pause any further funding for the Franklin High School project until we go further down and see if we can receive the state grant for $50 or $60 million for this high school project.
Well, I mean, I'm proposing myself. I mean, what we're looking at here tonight is we're willing to gamble $1.7 million in getting a $60 million grant. And yeah, it's kind of been promised to us. There are no guarantees in government. Have you made the application?
No, sir, the application is not available until after the budget passes. Then it's going to be 30, 45 days for school planning to rewrite the the grant application. Then you apply for it, and then, so you're talking possibly 3-4 months before you would know whether you get that grant. And the way that things have been going, if the budget could be, I don't know when it'll pass.
Up to date right now, with everything that we have in this project, have we done enough to qualify to be able to get this grant?
Well, you applied last time and you didn't get it. We're changing some things by incorporating, closing one school. We're actually closing 2 schools by doing this, and we're solving an ADA problem, which we had before, but we're just gonna continue to do that. But if y'all want to pause it, then
Motion's on the floor, Chairman.
Well, what I'm asking is, since we got rejected for the grant, from that point that we got rejected to today,
yeah.
we've made a lot of changes, we put a lot into this.
Yeah.
Was that enough?
I mean, I can't tell you that because, the superintendent of schools is the one that makes that decision. I don't make that. I can do my best to tell your story, but she is the one that picks all the grants for across North Carolina. And I don't have anything to do with that. And so, yes, we've done everything we can do, and we've done successfully for other clients. But I can't guarantee you that you're going to get a grant at all, and so I just can't guarantee that. I'm sorry, I wish I could.
Mr. Chairman, could I be recognized at, or am I being inappropriate?
Well, we have a motion on the floor. Stick it a second, then we'll have discussion.
You want me to sit down?
You can sit down. Well, I think I'll pause it. I'm not willing to gamble $1.7 million without having some comfort with this, because without this grant, even with this grant, we've still got $60 million to cover funding on. But I will second the motion and open the floor for discussion, further discussion.
Let me just say one thing. Did you want to say?
If y'all would allow me to, if that's not being inappropriate.
We've worked very hard, this community has, and this board has, and your board has, to continue this project on.
Right.
And I'll still say that education is an investment. It's not an expense. You're here, we're here, I'm here to invest in the kids of Macon County for the next X number of years. If we pause this, I think we're throwing in a hat. We need to continue with this project going down the road. And what scares me more than anything, if we stop this project, be ready for a legal battle.
Well, Mr. Shields, the thing of it is, I think we're far enough along with this. I didn't say we were going to suspend it indefinitely, but I think we're talking about a couple months, maybe 3 months of this, and the grant is make or break this deal. I mean, we've had this conversation, and then if the grant fails, we have to come up with another idea. But guess what? We're millions of dollars into this process with no way to move forward. I think it would benefit the people and the taxpayers of this county to pause this for 45 days, 60 days, whatever it takes to get recognized or whatever for this grant, and then come back to this. I'm not saying indefinitely. And as I've said many, many times before, this architectural firm has done a beautiful job of doing what they were hired for. And I've expressed a few times before, I don't agree that that site is the best place for a $100 million high school. And I believe there are a lot of people out here in this community that feel that way. Now, if we get the grant, then we can move forward and get the general public. But short of putting this on a referendum, I think we need to pause. That's why I made this motion. And I know y'all have worked tirelessly for this. I understand our ADA problems and everything else. But you also have to look. Our kids were in school today, were they not?
Let me ask you something, John. If us pausing this costs us that grant, you still willing to pause it?
We can't even apply for the grant.
No, I'm just asking, like, if we pause this, if you knew right now, pausing this grant would cost us, pausing this project would cost us the grant, would you still be willing to pause
But
it?
here's the deal. That's why I brought up the fact that we signed an agreement. We all voted on this. If we get this grant, we're ready to break ground on this school. I don't know how much more we can do as a board, but we are smart enough to know that without this grant, we can't move forward. And so what is the deal with pausing this thing for a few months to be real about moving this thing forward?
You're gonna send a message to the grantors. You're gonna send a message to them that we quit.
No, I didn't.
It'll be an obvious view that when you put something on pause, you're coming to an end of something. And I think you worked hard in your project. I think the LS3P's done an excellent job. School board, we've all worked hard. For us to pause this project right now, you'll not see a grant.
But if we don't have the money to move forward to build this, what good did we do?
Because we didn't take it.
Well, let me just add right here. First off, I just want to say thank you for your healthy discussion. This is good. And honestly, I think everybody has their own political, straws. But personally, when I look at this, I feel like we've somewhat been unanimous up to this date, and we've pledged over $2 million into this project, $2 million. So to me, I feel like just being honest and 100% transparent, this would have been a good time to have this conversation before we pledged $2 million. Okay, so we're there. To me, it's not a discussion of, do I want to build a school? Do I not want to build a school? Do I want to have the grant? We're pretty much there. We've already put $2 million on the shelf. It's going to take $1.6 million to pretty much get us there. We need the school board's involvement. To me, this should be contingent upon their approval, the public approval. We're already $2 million in. It'd been nice for you to, said it for the last meeting.
I've been talking about it the whole time.
I just want to note it was unanimous. But more so, I don't want to get in the weeds. I just want to say it's not the perfect site, John. I'll have to agree with you. If you remember a couple years ago, I had a special call meeting. We tried to, kind of look at a big picture item. This is where we landed, and this is a good site. It's going to work. It's going to be beautiful. That's why we bought the Higdon property. And at this point in time, I think we're backing up. We've already put over $2 million into the project. So now we're going to leave $2 million sitting on the shelf, which we should have at least left it in the account working for us with interest.
Or we're going to have $4 million
We're going to have
sitting on the shelf.
1.6, which is a turnkey project sitting on the desk, ready to build.
But what if we don't? Then we're into this thing $4 million. So what is 45 days to the taxpayers of Macon County waiting 45 days? I'm not saying that I'm indefinitely voting. That's not my motion.
I respectfully understand your position, and I just want to state mine. That's it.
Okay, I appreciate it.
I'm just gotta say, man, I'm not willing to gamble on that. We're already, like you said, we're already $2 million in, okay? I'm not willing to gamble on a pause and cost us getting this grant for us to move forward for these kids. That's just where I'm at right now. These kids mean a lot to me. They need this high school. It's got to get done. Okay? We started it. If we started it, we might as well go through. Okay? I get what you're saying, that like if we don't get the grant, there's not the money there. However, we don't know whether or not we're getting this grant. And to me, we should put every effort possible to get to that place where we can get it. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I understand, Commissioner. I mean, I understand completely. And I respect that. But they're not completely stopped. They still have work to be done where they are now. They're asking for funding to go to the next phase when they complete this phase and to keep working. And I don't see that 45 days or 60 days waiting on the state is going to make or break this school. I don't see that. I mean, we have signed an agreement with the state that we're ready to move forward. Give us $60 million and let us break ground.
I'll give one more angle on that. To me, in a professional atmosphere, it's you're well prepared if there's not a hitch. If you plan a hitch, that's to me that's poor planning and poor judgment. So I feel like the architects are doing what they're supposed to do, which is plan. They're here because the next step is coming up, and they're saying, guys, if you want to proceed, this is what we need from you. If you don't, we'll go back to the house. And that's what they're asking, in my opinion, is do you want us to keep going or do you want to stop? That's what I see. So
right.
I personally want to keep going, okay. And that's my personal
stance. And I'm grateful for this conversation. I made the motion, it has been seconded, it's the other three commissioners of this board to make a decision, so that's.
Call for a vote.
Let me throw a hypothetical out there. Like you said, this may be a little bit late. I think when we started this thing 10 years ago, when I was on this board, it should have went to a referendum on whether the pit. But being optimistically, this grant will happen. And we've talked about the importance of that proceeding. We never know what's happening in government. If we're turned down for this grant this year, what does this board do in reference to the proposed project? Are there 3 votes here that's going to say we're going to increase taxes because it's within our capacity? These 5 people.
If you're asking me, I think you go forward. I think I don't view it as a gamble. I view it as a investment. If something happens and we don't get that, we come back here and work out a program going forward. You just don't quit. This is the 21st century. Our young people deserve what Ms. Strickland has put together there. We've got tremendous amount of reason to get back into our career technical education, but you cannot put those 16 to 18 courses in Franklin High School. It's not a 21st century building. If you're going to take these young people to the next level, working level or what it may be, we're going to have to invest in them. That's all.
Yeah, I know.
Let's throw a hypothetical out there. Let's say we go into this, we don't get the grant. You put this on a referendum and the people voted yes. Okay. And they're willing to pay the taxes. How do y'all feel about that?
Well, you can apply for the grant next year. There's 2 years, the state in this budget.
No, what I'm asking is, again, the hypothetical is, we do this 1.7 million, right? Comes grant time, we don't get the grant. We put it on a referendum, basically saying we've got to raise your taxes X amount, and it passes. How do y'all feel about that?
If the people say, if the will of the people is to pay for it, I will never, ever, ever vote against the will of the people.
Then that's my suggestion.
That's what?
That's my suggestion.
That's Plan B.
Pay the 1.7. If we miss the grant, put it on referendum. If the people voted in, we go for it. If they don't vote it in, stop the project.
And then we're $4 million into it.
But I'll tell you what, man, and everybody may not agree with me, but at this point in my life, when it comes to these kids and when it comes to doing something for them, I'm willing to go whatever extent I gotta go to for them, okay? Do I look at that as a loss? It is a loss, but it's also an investment that you are trying to do something for these kids. You see what I'm saying? So, I mean, I'm not looking at, and again, everybody might not agree with me on that. I'm just saying that's just my personal view on that. Because these kids are worth fighting for and they're worth me taking a chance on them. But that's just my personal view.
But we just had a representative from the state here telling us that Macon County has a 95% graduation rate. So that's the best grade you can get. So what are we failing the kids by what they have now? The kids are the most important, the most precious gift that God ever gave us. And by all means, absolutely, I want to give them stuff. But somebody has to pay for this stuff. And all I'm saying is growing up, I was always told, and you heard me campaign on this, only a fool will build something with no idea how to pay for it. That's what the Bible teaches us. And so therefore, all I'm saying is, folks, is let's pause this thing and get our ducks in a row. I wasn't part of this planning, unfortunately, and Commissioner Hickman, or Chairman Hickman and I have met with the architect firm numerous times, as well as you, trying to catch up to this thing. I know what my constituents out here are saying. I know what the people that want this new high school, what they're saying. I'm not ever saying that we don't need a new high school. I went to Raven County the other day, and I drove all through their campus, over on 76. They have the most awesome agriculture center over there on 76 you've ever laid your eyes on. That's what I want for Macon County. And I don't believe we have the growth factor on this current property to do what Raven County did for their children. And all I'm saying is, let's pause this thing for 45 days or 60 days, let the state get their ducks in a row, and by that time frame, we can see where we go to.
Okay.
That's it.
Good discussion. Good discussion. All right, gentlemen, we have a motion second on the floor. Everybody through? All in favor signify by raising your right hand. This is on the motion to pause it for a period of time till we have a little more direction or a little more feedback from the grant approval. It's not to suspend Franklin High School project. All right?
Well, that's not what his motion said.
My motion was to suspend funding to give us more time to see what the state does and let us apply for the grant to see if Macon County is going to receive a $50-60 million grant to build this school.
Okay, I guess that's
my motion.
I guess that's what I seconded too. All right, we have a motion second on the floor. All in favor signify by raising your right hand, saying aye.
What? That's my motion.
Yes, it's your motion.
Right. And I'm raising my
I'll
hand.
raise my hand on that. All right, we have two. All opposing, like sign. Thank you, gentlemen. Let the record reflect 3-2. Thank you. Ooh, that was a length one.
Look, Chairman, I'd like to make a motion we proceed with construction docks as requested by the architect.
I second that motion.
Could you add to your motion, you're going to move forward, to also budget amendment to appropriate $1,666,560 from general fund balance?
Yes, ma'am, with the budget amendment.
I second that.
All right, we have a motion second. Any discussion? Kind of goes hand in hand with the other one. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by raising your right hand. We have 3. All opposed, like sign. 3-2. Let the record reflect. Thanks, Paul. Thank you, gentlemen. Request 9C, request for authorization, request for qualification RFQ for furniture for Franklin High School. County Manager Derek Rowland.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And while the architects are still with us, Emily and I have discussed this, and basically what's going on here as they proceed into the construction documents phase, and Emily, please feel free to add in. We need to issue a request for qualifications. This is not a request for proposals. We're looking for qualified firms to work with the architect on furniture selection. Now, there's a big question, why do we need furniture now? During this time in the process, we're not obligating ourselves to any money. We will never pay for any furniture if we do not build the school. But nonetheless, the furniture is an integral part of this project and needs to be planned for upfront and during this construction documents phase. When you're looking at things such as electrical outlets and where furniture goes, I mean, you're talking about a lot of classrooms, a lot of furniture, a lot of fixtures. And Ms. Kite, if you would like to add to that, I know it's just very important that we go ahead, since we have approved this construction document phase, and go ahead and get the architect via an RFQ aligned with a furniture group. The furniture will be purchased on state contract.
That's true. The other advantage that we gain by working with a vendor at this point in the process is not only the sort of space planning and cataloging and inventorying the furniture that we will need and coordinating with electrical requirements and other things, but we also get real-time budget data on what those costs will be that are in addition to the construction costs for the project. So we get the benefit of getting real information about the cost of that work as the project progresses and we get closer to determining the funding strategy for the project overall. And so I think that there's no obligation for funds or fees paid for those services. It's just a qualifications packet so that we can have someone to work with on that part of the work.
Thank you, Emily. All right, gentlemen.
Just to clarify, this doesn't cost the county, doesn't obligate the county, it's more or less planning for classroom space.
Correct.
Just for your information, the RFQ that was in the packet, that was just from another county.
Yeah.
That's not gonna be the one we send out. You know, my
We're not
staff-
paying for their furniture.
My staff will have to
Yeah.
develop an RFQ to meet our county standards.
I wanted you to see an example of what the RFQ is and what that kind of looks like. Of course, ours will be different.
And Lori, we'd like to work with you with that already. Let Emily work with you, make sure she.
Does that take a motion, Mr. Chairman? I make a motion, we move forward with the furniture, what Mr. Rowan Hughes recommended.
Second that motion.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, signify by raising your right hand. I mean, it's something we gotta do. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Emily. Is that for you guys?
I think that, do you need us for anything else? Happy to stay.
Appreciate your work today.
Thank you all.
See you, Daniel. Thank y'all.
Appreciate it.
All right. Still under old business. 9D, discussion and approval of lease between the Macon County and the Macon County Board of Education for the Higdon property.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're here tonight. We have, as you recall, we signed an MOU some time back. The school board, as well as the county commissioners, signed on to that memorandum of understanding that once we had acquired the Higdon property, that we would work together to get a lease in place so that the school board could take on that Higdon property and use it as they see fit and begin to plan and work with this board and as how we're going to move forward with that. We have since done that. Our attorneys, Mr. Ridenhour and Mr. Henning, with the school board, have worked to draft a lease that was satisfactory to both parties. The school board has approved that lease and it is here before us tonight. This is in line with the terms that we have discussed, and I would recommend, if our attorney has anything to add, I would recommend the board considering this lease for approval tonight.
I'd like to make a motion then that we have the approval of the lease between Macon County and the Macon County Board of Education for the Higdon property. Make that into a motion. Have a lease agreement.
The motion is second. Any discussion?
Yes, if I can find it. A little concerning about that the county's going to be required to do the maintenance and everything else, and that the county is going to be responsible for bringing the Higdon property up to ADA compliant and do the work to that property to benefit the school system, and there's no limits that I see on this. So are we talking about spending $500,000 on the Higdon property? We're talking about spending $10 million.
Can I, so here's my take on this, and Chairman and Superintendent are sitting right there. Right now, there's no real intent to go in and modify and change and bring it to ADA. This is strictly a lease agreement for the property. Keep in mind, the school board works off a budget we hand them. So we hand them more property to maintain. They don't print money. At the end of the day, it's a dog and pony show. They have to come back to us. So I sympathize there. But at this point in time, personally, there's nothing to do with remodeling, renovating the Higdon home itself at this point in time, strictly a lease agreement. Am I right in saying that?
Right, yeah, right now we just own this property, don't know how it's going to be utilized yet until it is or is not incorporated into the high school project. I mean, I guess at this point it would probably raise a lot of eyebrows, but I mean, at this point that technically that house could be torn down, razed completely, and then barn or whatever erected in its place. I mean, I'm not saying that's what we're doing, or the county even talked about it, I'm just saying, right now, there's no plans as it exists to do anything with the property.
Right, and I think what this contemplates more than anything, of course, the routine maintenance, the mowing, the water bills, the power bills, winterization, the school board will handle that, the routine maintenance. Now, what is contemplated here is that, we want the school board, I think the beneficial part of this lease is it goes ahead and gives them access to the property. It gives their staff, their board, they can begin going through and looking at it and assessing it and deeming what will best suit their needs. Because at the end of the day, that's what we were saying all along with the Higdon property is we wanted the school board to use it in the way that best meets their needs. So as they go through budgeting processes, whether it be next year or a year in the future, if the Board of Education goes in and identifies a project on the Higdon property and identifies a cost for that project, it will be treated as any other capital project that's identified by the Board of Commissioners, and it will have a priority, will be given to that project by the school board, and then that will be relayed to this board, and it will then be up to this board for funding. But this lease gives them the opportunity to really get in there and develop what they want this project to be. But as far as the money part of it, and what it says is, not in section 7.2A here of Article 7, section 7.2, the bold notwithstanding, it is understood and agreed that the existing structures located on the property would require substantial renovations for educational purposes. We were aware of that. And as Commissioner Young alluded to, it goes on to say that the Board of Education does not have the financial means to make such renovations, and the county does not expect the Board of Education to make such improvements or renovations. And that just goes back to what Commissioner Young was saying about they work off the budget we hand them. And, they're not going to, we can't expect them to make renovations until they've identified a project and it's been brought to us for consideration for funding, and we have vetted that project and agreed to fund it. So that's just saying, we know you're on a fixed budget. We know you've identified your capital priorities for this year. You were not expecting to have this 10 acres and facility added on to that, and we know you don't have the money in your budget to do a project this year or substantially renovate this house this year. But I think at such time that they identify how they're going to use that, it will be put into their capital prioritization, and then it will be brought to this board for funding.
And so the Higdon property was built when?
52.
When was Franklin High School built?
What part of it?
The main building, the first part.
Did it go back to the 50s?
Okay, so if we can take the Higdon property and bring it ADA compliant, why can't the Franklin High School campus be ADA compliant?
Hey, I'm with you.
Okay, I mean, that's the whole conversation.
But bringing Franklin High School up to ADA, it's just about impossible. You know that.
Higdon property is a good piece of property. I'm glad that we collectively are in possession of it. It's just It is too great to leave. We don't know what we're gonna do with it yet. We do need to do some maintenance, got the driveway out of the tree, or got the tree out of the driveway. The day before, it's on you guys now, once we sign this document, you're ready. But I'm glad we got this, it's gonna take some work together. We wanna see what we can utilize that property to enhance agriculture programs we have going at Macon Middle School. I mean, I just see it's a good piece of property.
And Ms. Strickland there has put in a lot of time working with her faculty and staff and people in order to generate the energy to make this an agricultural piece.
There's a lot of work that will need to be done. All right, gentlemen, I think we have a motion. Did I get a second? Got a second? All in favor of the lease agreement as discussed here, please raise your right hand. All opposed? Let the record reflect 4-1. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, guys.
Chairman King, would it be inappropriate just to briefly address the board? If you don't think so, I'll be glad to go out.
Oh, no, you guys here, let's do it. I mean, we're not that formal here, Jim.
As I listen to Mr. Boney, I think there's a couple of things I do want to maybe correct or bring out. First of all, the grant is a process. And what happened is every school in the state of North Carolina is going to apply for this because it's money that you can use. So it's not a matter of a school system being rejected. What they do is they take the money that's allotted and then they spread that money out as best they can. And when the money runs out, well, the kids, the people, depending on what you've presented, you may not get it. Does that make sense? So it's not a rejection factor. It's actually a matter of how good did you make the presentation
On the application.
on the application. So that's why I want to thank you all for doing what you did tonight, because what you have done, in my opinion, you have expanded the possibilities of us getting this grant.
Amen.
Because what's going to happen is, Mr. Boney and crew, they're going to make a package, and they're going to be able to show our commitment and where we're headed with this. And I think we're going to be so far ahead of the other applications which come into play. That's going to be a plus on our application, which greatly enhances our chances of winning and getting this grant. Okay?
And what I did not want us to fall into the same category, I cannot remember which county it was,
Right.
but they got the grant.
I was going to say that.
And had to bring that back. Give that
Right.
back.
That's where I was going with
Well, that's
Mr.
the
Sherrill.
The
Right.
reason why they had to give it back, they got into litigation and
Right.
they couldn't afford it.
Right, I get that. I
It
get
wasn't
that.
anything to do with.
Right.
It had everything to do with legalities.
Right.
And
But
the
what we
state-
asked, right. The reason we ask y'all to continue that discussion, that's why we ask y'all to join with us in making a commitment. They've received that to follow through with it. Because we also feel, based on the advice we've been given, that's also very important as this committee that looks at this, based on some things that's happened in the state, where due to litigation or whatever, grants were given and weren't accepted. We want to make sure the committee, we're looking at it, Macon County Schools wants this money. And if you give this money to us, we are going to use it. I think that's also a huge plus in our application. Okay? And that's what we sent. It was not an agreement with DPI or whatever. We're simply making sure they're aware that we are in a position when we get this funding, we're going to move forward. Okay? And that's why it was so important, and that's why I want to thank you for the action you took tonight, because I think what y'all have done is you've made this whole project, taken a huge giant leap forward in being able to convince the people that's making decisions, and unfortunately that's what we're dependent on. Those people that make it, they don't know Macon County. They don't know how good we are. We have a 95% graduation rate, which is a testament to our educators. But there's also more than just the graduation rate. We also have to look at, with the facility, how are we offering our children all the opportunities that we need to offer them to make their move it to the next phase in life. Vocational. I think now we're getting the fact we have the lease on the Higdon property. We can now move forward with our FFA program, which is very, very important. We can expand what we're going to be able to offer them into hands-on experiences that will help them. We don't have to put them in buses and haul them down to the fairgrounds as much. We have a facility that's much closer. And we can build that property to how we envision it would best suit our students. All right?
And
So
I agree.
again,
And that 95% graduation rate, it's good, but
can be better.
if it's not, but it's
Right.
not good if that, out of that 95%, most of them end up failing in life.
Correct.
How do we get them to be ready, to be really successful beyond graduation.
And that's the other
There's a
part
lot
of
of
this,
things that gotta
right.
happen in school for that to happen.
That's why the Signet property also offers opportunities as we get into it, our CTE program. Gentlemen, that's the way, that's the future. Agriculture, vocational, CTE, that's the future, and that best suits the students that we have coming from Macon County. That's what they need. I remember years ago, Mr. Shields on his head, bear with me. Every child should go to college. That was a whole mantra we heard in the state. The most ridiculous thing that's ever came down the pike as far as education goes. We need to offer children what is going to best benefit them in the niches and areas of work, prepare them for jobs, and make them success and take part in our community. So your action tonight, I think, helped for this final reason. I do think because of the delay in the budget, when this thing opens for commitments, the quicker we can get one in and get it in there and make a complete comprehensive presentation, the better it's going to be received. Because I think we have people that's going to help support us in this. I think getting that there as one of the first ones is going to be very beneficial. So thank you for moving forward on it in terms of that. So
Thank you.
Thank you all for all you've done. We appreciate your commitment to our students. We have to have it. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, moving on, old business 9E, discussion regarding the Parks and Recreation design from McGill and Associates, project planner James Ford.
Hello.
Hello. Oh.
Got set there, and we're gonna pull up a PowerPoint. Can y'all see y'all screens okay? If not, I've got printed copies. Good? Excellent.
I see you have extra printed copies, or?
I do have some printed copies. You can use mine for now, and I'll
No,
leave the
you can
screen.
use it, I'll get one.
I'll leave them with you.
No problem.
Okay, if you remember, I'm Jim Ford from McGill. We've been working with your public to figure out how best to develop a site master plan for the county park. It's actually been a really fruitful process. This has culminated in a master plan graphic that we have shown to the public. We've got public comments all throughout this process. I wanted to remind everybody how important it is to have a plan moving forward with any sort of great development. It does not obligate you, if you were to adopt this plan, to actually building anything, but it does say that you acknowledge the public's voice, that we've captured that voice through public engagement activities, done due diligence on the property, developed concepts, worked with the Recreation Advisory Board, and come up with a concept moving forward that therefore makes you eligible for grant funding in the future. Without an adopted plan, it'll be unlikely to get grant funding. With that, I'd like to share some of the findings and catch you guys up with what we've been doing. Obviously, I'll talk about the site, how we did the public input, share a little bit about the concepts, show you the final concept, and the Recreation Advisory Board members asked if I could put together some costs to what it might cost to build the different phases of this park. That's dangerous. It's my crystal ball, it's cloudy, and really, you can't do a justice to what things cost unless you have construction documents. Okay, a survey and actual plans. We're looking at 30,000 foot conceptual level. So I'd rather scare you today than tomorrow. With that, we'll move forward. Due diligence included your site. We went out to your site, looked at your site, met with staff, looked at past planning documents, et cetera. One of the major things is you've got a well-loved park. It's got a little date on it, but it's still used, it's still loved. There's some improvements that could be had. We'll discuss those. One of the big features is that it's predominantly in a flood zone. I think it's always been that way, and it's occasionally flooded, but that's not anything major. Where that does make a difference in how the layout came about is that we can't put things in the floodway, not without a great deal of expense, and things we can avoid with good planning. So that's what that image is there. The flood zones. We looked at that in detail. I think everybody's aware of that. I think most people here have probably been to the park. It's a beautiful park. The pool is always busy every time I go there. The rec center is always busy. I often see fields that sometimes get used and sometimes don't. So I started looking at, well, what is the community telling us they'd like to see at the park so that they'll use it more often moving forward. Community input. We had to ask the public, well, gosh, what do you think of the park now? Or what do you visualize the future park being? consisting of, since 2020, COVID reminded us all how important it is to be allowed to get outdoors, right? They also now crave things like events, concerts, plays, getting together as a family, having those reunions. People are craving this. They have for a few years now. I hoped that the input that I received reflected what I'd seen across the state. And it's the same case here as it is everywhere. We did have an online survey. We did have community meetings where we shared images, precedent images, concepts, etc. Overall, I had 347 people take that survey. It was a household survey representing 642 individuals. That's actually very good. I'm used to get, you get what you get, but you hope to get a number that makes it significant. We did. I'm going to go through the very dull data quickly. Not all of it, but just some of the more important things. Barriers to recreation. Everybody's heard about, people need to have access to things like education. Well, parks are just as important to a good quality of life in Macon County as a lot of other things. Barriers. What was some of the major barriers the public told us? Things aren't offered. There's not what I want there. Right? Number two, not enough time. That's always number one or two. None of us have enough time, right? How do they rate the opportunities and events offered right now? You'd see people are, mostly fair. But between excellent and fair is the majority. And that means you're doing a good job. Your staff's doing a good job. People have appreciated what's been done in the past. But as we'll find out, people will also like to see some new things. The top 10 things out of a vast list and a write-in opportunity that people told us, it's the summertime, a swimming pool. Everybody's hot. You got a pool now, it's busy, but the pools are always popular. But they said specifically indoor. And why? Because your neighbors up the road have a nice covered pool. Everybody gets to see it and they see the 4-season possibilities. The schools that came out said, hey, yeah, it'd be awesome. We'd be able to practice year round. So that came out number one. Number two, walking and jogging trails. That's usually number one on every one of the surveys I usually do. I've done this for 16 years. So to see that that's number two, it's in that top. Regardless, there's pool again. I remind you, it's very hot outside. Outdoor playground. And there's a caveat to outdoor playground. In the open-ended comments, a lot of people mentioned a desire for accessible playgrounds, meaning something for my child who may be on the autism spectrum, who may have limited disability or limited abilities, some disabilities. Playgrounds are traditionally, you know what a playground is. Nowadays, they're a little bit different. There's some musical instruments. There's a surface that a wheelchair can roll across. There's a number of different items. People actually asked for these things. I think we noticed that also when we did the study over in Franklin for the park up there. People want an accessible playground. That's nothing new. So we're good. I'm glad to see the data represented here mirrored in the Franklin survey. Natural surface walking trails, again, like number two, people want to have an ability to go out, walk, get exercise. As a matter of fact, most of us aren't going to join a gym. Most of us, when the doctor says you need to lose weight, they're going to go out and walk, right? Having places to do that besides around the block every day, if you even have that access, it's good to have this offered. So not surprising. Accessible inclusive playground, there it is again. Pickleball, oh my goodness, you guys are a pickleball community. Pickleball has been growing. You're a pickleball community, okay? It's a demographic thing at the moment, but that is changing. This is one of the fastest, if not the fastest growing activity in the country. So, no surprise there. Pickleball, picnic areas. Why? Because I'm out here walking, I want to bring my family. Let's have a picnic. After COVID, you saw picnic areas rise in surveys all across the country. So that's pretty interesting. Fitness trail. I don't know if you guys know what fitness stations are. Basically, outdoor fitness equipment along that trail. Give us a little more variety for that exercise. And then open space. We just want to be outside. So moving forward, there was a lot of open-ended comments. Okay, there was a big old field on the survey. People could type anything they wanted. I heard about things that had nothing to do with recreation. But when I took the recreation comments, this is called a word cloud, if you're looking at that. The number one things, the words and the themes that rise to the top are those larger, darker words. Pickleball, courts, indoor. Overall, when I read those, I got the sense that yes, pickleball is rising. They want more courts. People want more outdoor spaces and places to walk. They want that indoor pool for the that four seasonality and other indoor facilities. The rec center is popular, but people want to do more activities indoors because it gets cold here in the winter.
Do they favor or oppose expanding recreational opportunities? Should we do anything? And overwhelmingly, people will say, yes, please do something. Now, I would be remiss to leave Franklin out because that study was done just before we started the county study. And so I looked at all their data as well. And I've just put this one graph up here because it was the write-in request where people have that open-ended. Notice that you're seeing a trend here. There's the indoor, the swimming pool, the pickleball in there as well. Now, theirs is a little different, but for the most part, the majority of the data mirrored one another, the county and the towns. We did a public meeting that I wanted to let you know about. After the concepts were reviewed, and I'll get into those in a minute, we wanted to take the culmination of the public input as represented in the concepts, as reviewed by the advisory board and the county staff, and create something that we can share with the public and say, is this what you meant? Is this what you were telling us you wanted? And they came out. I mean, at least 53 people came out in 2 different meetings overall. And I'd say there was probably more like 70 people. Not everybody signed in. I heard no negative comments, which is unusual because, like I said, I've done this for 16 years. There's usually a naysayer. They may be here today. I don't know. But people said, yeah, that works for us. Now, we know everything costs money, and we didn't talk about money, right? But people like the things that are on this plan because they're the ones who told. This is designed by the public, because the public informed. But you may ask, well, how did you come to that? What were the concepts? The concepts were basically 2 versions of where to put the activities the public wanted on this site. And I mentioned before the idea of that floodway, and we really don't want to put anything in that floodway. So that leaves other areas. They may be limited by topography or soils or proximity to other things. When you lay it all out, we did have 2 basic concepts, alternate A, alternate B. What made A unique was it had a futsal court. What's futsal? Does anybody know what futsal is? That's like soccer on a basketball court with 6 guys. And it takes different versions, but basically, you have a Latino community here, that said, hey, we're here, we're using your basketball court on the weekends, and sometimes this is what we do. You think maybe we could have a court just to do this? That's why we put it in that concept, because you actually had a significant number of people mention it. Not that it was in their top 5 things they wanted, but it came up, and that doesn't often come up in these, so something to acknowledge. The covered pool area was unique to A and not B. So you had 2 different options. It was, well, are you sure you want a covered pool? Or would the regular pool work? And so that's why A had the covered pool. Expanding the playground, but with a top lot. Taking the existing playground, saying, okay, we got a playground. It's not that old. It's a little bit out of the way, but maybe if we added some top lot things there, we'd get greater participation, more multi-generational, like adding in the younger folks there. Alternate B, the fitness park course. I mentioned those fitness stations on the trail. B had it, A didn't. Shade sail with hammock stands. Somebody mentioned that to me in one of the Franklin meetings. It didn't end up over there, but I thought, why couldn't we do that here? A shade sail is just a big piece of fabric. And hammock stands, I don't know if anybody camps here. I'm a scout leader. My son back there, Boy Scout. We pretty much just camp in hammocks more than tents, but hammocks are wonderful. They've risen to people's consciousness. Having a place to come out here and just read a book. You know, that's what that is, and B had that. Bocce courts, you got them. But we wanted to show that those could be upgraded. Relocated sand volleyball and playground. You've got a sand volleyball court now. I think it has a better spot and other uses. We'll get into that in the final concept. And additional creek access, because you have some creek access, and every visit I made, I was probably here 10 times, there was somebody walking down there wanting to play in the creek. Of course, it's summer. Again, it's hot. People want to get in the water. So that's why B had that. Now, the things that were shared that did end up on that final, the walking path, people want it paved. They want a long circuit so they can come out here, get their mileage in, go home. Splash pad. Well, yeah, you do have a pool, and there is a kiddie area. But I don't know how many people that have children, grandchildren or children, that haven't been to a splash pad. That's the thing to do. And so we wanted to make sure that was on both of those. Racket sports complex. Did I mention you're a pickleball community? I was beat over the head that pickleball is important to us. And so, yes, that's on both of those. Playground improvements. Yes, you have a playground. No, it's not fully accessible. Yes, it is a little bit out of the way. I wanted to try to remedy that in the final concept. Smaller baseball, softball field. Why? Because you've got the new complex, right? Parker Meadows. You don't need that big field.
it could have other uses. We explored that with the public through comments, and yeah, people agree, let's do something different with that, but don't get rid of our fields. We still want a couple fields. Why? Because not everybody's on a team and they still want to play ball. So there you go. Remove that 300-foot field net for the smaller fields. Moving on. That final concept is before you. Not everybody can see that. It's probably hard to see, so I want to try to explain a little bit of this. That large green area is where the big 300-foot field is. That area becomes converted into that open space that was requested. Also, the idea of, well, we want to have music and events. We used to do that at the park. Well, you can still do that. If you build an amphitheater, a small covered shelter area that can project the sound, you've got a natural geography that people can go sit on and enjoy an event. Listen to a band, whatever you want to do out there.
Fireworks.
I didn't say it, but I heard a lot of it. Okay? You've already got existing restrooms there. Okay? You've already got access there. This seems to be a no-brainer to put it there. I will say a little caveat. I did learn through my due diligence that does need to be so that water can flow through it. We don't want to obstruct the water because that is the only building that made it into that floodway. And there is a little bit more homework you have to do before you do that. It's not an impossibility. You just have to design it for the regulations. Other things, the pickleball and tennis complex. There was an issue with the existing tennis courts. Some of you may be aware of that, some of you may not. They're having to repave those more regularly than you typically would. It's a little bit out of the way. If you were to build new pickleball courts over where this existing, I guess that was a softball field over there, or might as well do the tennis courts over there as well and keep all this stuff condensed. You also have the opportunity to bring tournaments. That could be a potential revenue generator. If anything, it's a quality of life issue because you do have so many people that are struggling to find places to play and they're not able to do those tournaments without leaving the community. Here they get to stay in the community. Okay? This concept shows a large picnic shelter. I envision some restrooms under there, maybe a room so somebody can go in there and change clothes. If you've got a tournament, great place to make sign-ups, etc., so people can come enjoy that. And then the parking that you would need. Also in that racquetball complex, you'll notice something called the new picnic area. There's already people picnicking over there and doing some other things as well. We need to be able to clear that out. But formalizing a small picnic shelter and some picnic tables satisfies those comments we heard about we want more picnic areas as well. Moving up to the pool. And we're going to get into the different areas when I talk about phasing. But the pool, this concept does show that large orange area. We're not designing a covered pool. That's another project. But for a master plan, we want to acknowledge, especially when we go after funding, that this has always been our plan. And that's why we've done our due diligence and our homework, and we deserve that grant. So that's why that's on there. Moving around the road where the old tennis courts were becomes an open space that can be striped for youth soccer practice or anything else. It's that open space again. But you can probably, and I did the math, you can fit a couple of youth soccer practice fields up there. So that can help alleviate, some of the scheduling issues for practices. There's that futsal court. It showed up. When we showed this to the advisory, board, they said, yeah, that's a great idea. Let's keep one of those courts over there and then stripe it for futsal. Why not? We don't have to demo the whole thing. We're not talking about fancy asphalt. It's just a concrete pad. They go out there and stripe it, put their goals up. Continuing on around, you'll notice a new 2 covered basketball courts. Basketball courts are fun. It's great to have outdoor basketball courts. A covered one, especially in the summer, is a lot more comfortable, but more importantly, this is a gathering space. If you want to have summer camps, if you want to have group gatherings, you can rent out that shelter. Yeah, it's got basketball striping on the concrete. It's a multi-use structure. It's just a shade structure. It doesn't have to even be stick-built. You could use that tensile structure like we mentioned before for the shade sail. I'll show you a picture of what that looks like in a minute. The main centerpiece, is that amphitheater open space, but up on top of the hill, oh my gosh, what an opportunity to move that playground out front and center and say, we have this great accessible playground. Right here in the middle, families come, right? I envision this having some sort of mix of that pour-and-play surface and probably some more traditional playground surfacing. Certainly, playground equipment that the county would choose that was to your liking, that fit your theme, was also accessible. But this is where we would locate that splash pad also. Having a splash pad next to a playground, that's synergy. If you don't do that, you have people running across to do both, right? Anyway, so you might as well put it right there as a centerpiece. You've got ample parking now. We've included a little bit of extra parking just around the corner there where the maintenance, that paint building is.
maintenance building number 1, so you'll have parking. But I also think you need at least a couple more picnic shelters. Why? Because not everybody wants to be standing out in the sun at the splash pad. They want to go play. I'm sitting over here in the shade, and so you need that. But you also need to acknowledge restrooms. And so where you have that beautiful shelter that's over there now, there might be a way for an architect to be able to shoehorn in a little 2-hole restroom up under there as well, so that you can include more restrooms closer to where that playground is. There may be other ways to do it. Again, we're at 30,000 feet. This is conceptual. I think there's an opportunity. We've done it before, so I know it can be done. Down where the senior games are typically performed, where you've got the shuffleboard and the bocce court, for the most part, that area stays like it is, with the exception of the improved bocce courts. I feel like you need more paved area for tents, and you need a picnic shelter down there. Why? Because when you're doing the senior games, and I used to volunteer for senior games as an official all the time, you need shade. You need more shade, not just over where people are playing, but where people are sitting, spectating, doing sign-ups, eating lunch, etc. It's always a fun event, and something that's happened here for years. This master plan does not acknowledge any needed improvements for the existing indoor recreation facility. This looks at the park as a whole, but not saying you need new striping in the gym or the bathrooms aren't up to par. It's in pretty good shape, so we left that part out. And we didn't receive any comments to say otherwise. I want to go into a little more detail just because it's hard to see. I've blown these up so y'all can tell. Remember, this is conceptual, it's just 2D. We're talking about 9 pickleball courts. I know some people said they wanted 21 pickleball courts. I don't know where to put them. But I can say that that shelter where the basketball striping is, it could be conceivable that you could pickleball stripe that as well. Or put tent, which you're using now, tent nest, you can put those up there. There's just, a graphic to show you what that could look like in the future. That's actually Highlands, I believe. But this is the area we live in and the activities that people are taking in. The event lawn and playground, because I didn't know what else to call it. Looking at that a little bit closer, you can see what that looks like with the playground up on the top of the hill, looking down into the field where you've got that amphitheater. It's beautiful, it's inviting, it looks fresh. When people want to move here, they're going to see this park and be like, wow, this is a cool community. The slides, the hill slides. You've got a natural feature that in other places, I've been to Johnson City, I think there's one in Hickory, there is, our Baker Park. Using hills and putting a slide on them is our destination. All the kids are going to be saying, hey mom, can you take me over to the slides? That's going to be one more thing that generates that traffic, that brings people to the park. So not everybody is familiar with what a hillside is. So I wanted to show you a picture of that, and rope climbers, etc. Actually, that picture on the bottom I took in Johnson City, Tennessee, and what they had done was, and what we proposed, see these dark green areas? That's AstroTurf. Because it's easier to maintain that on a hill than natural grass, which you will be constantly trying to maintain. The AstroTurf's one and done. It takes care of itself for 10, 15 years, and the kids love to slide down it. Whether they're on the slide or on a cardboard box, it's a cool thing to do. If you want to see that, go to Johnson City, check it out. It's always busy. Futsal, I explained what that is. Just want to show you a picture of what one community did, and honestly, I've seen this take many different forms. It's basically like a basketball or tennis court. They wall that off, they put their goals up, and they do what they do and have been doing for years. There's that tensile structure. When I talked about the 2 covered basketball courts, that's exactly what that image is. Those are 2 basketball courts. That's actually a summer camp up under, but that tensile structure, 15 years or so, is easy to maintain. It's a little bit cheaper than actually having to stick build that. Senior games area, I talked about that. What does that look like? But I also wanted to show you that the sand volleyball court would be moving over to that area where the playground is now. The shade sail, that's probably my favorite thing on the whole plan, because it's probably where I'm going to go once it's done. I'm going to be up underneath there doing my thing while the kids play. There's an opportunity to link an existing parking lot next to the gym, the community center, with this new racket complex if you were to put a pedestrian bridge in. That image of the Cortan Bridge, that's a simple pedestrian bridge. You've got a bridge over on one side now. I think doing another one that links it gives you another restroom that's within walking distance of the racket complex, or changing rooms, if that's what it is. But more importantly, parking. Yeah, you have a lot of parking, but how much more convenient is it to just park right there and walk over the bridge? I feel like There's a lot going on. People have a huge list of things they love to see. And if you've got a ton of money to build it all at once, that is wonderful. I don't usually see that. It usually requires phasing. Okay, phasing where we break it apart. We're not gonna eat pie in one bite. We're gonna divide it up and we're gonna take it over time. Now this plan assumes maybe 10-year build out. I will say things are cheaper now than they will be in the future, as was discussed earlier in the evening. But how would we phase this? There are no construction documents, and that does affect phasing. But since I have done this for many years and I've designed a lot of parks, I feel like these are sort of the general areas. It's 4 big areas of the park broken into 6 different phases. The racket complex being phase 1A and B. Get the courts built. You've got existing asphalt you can use for parking now. Won't be enough because it's going to be popular, but it'll serve until funding comes to do the rest of it. Now, we'll say you can apply for Parks and Recreation Trust Fund grant money every year. You can do that every year. And you can use the same due diligence, this same report, because there is a written report that explains all this that the staff is currently reviewing. But that's going to spell out all, it's going to have all that due diligence, everything you need to fill out those grant applications. I've got more of those part of grant applications than I think anyone else in the state. It's got all those check marks already checked. You open that up, and your answers are in there. But phase 2 would be that large open space. You're removing a field, you're grassing that, you're building the amphitheater. Phase 2B, the playground area. Phase 3, the pool. That's a huge piece by itself, right? And then phase 4 would be all the things connected, the connective tissue. Those other small areas in that paved trail. Now, I don't normally break this apart because I don't like doing this without construction documents. Unless I can actually do a takeoff and tell you exactly how much asphalt and fill and everything else, it's really difficult. Like I said, that crystal ball is not very reliable, but I've designed a lot of parks. And looking at existing parks built within the last 2 years, at similar items, not exact, and trying to figure out what did it cost them to do it, and what would it likely cost us today. Inflation is real, everybody knows it. I feel like what you probably feel like looking at this every time I go to the grocery store. But I attempted to break each of these phases down into its components, look at existing projects at what it would cost to build those, and then plug them in here. Don't hold me to it. If you wait 3 years, if you wait a year, if you wait 10 years, it's gonna change. If you did it today with construction documents, the takeoffs would change and the costs would change. But because it was requested by the Recreation Advisory Board, I have made an attempt to show costs. I'm gonna skip through a bunch of these and go straight to the summary, okay? Each of these I did this for. It's a lot of money, but think about it. It's over a long time, and it will have a huge impact on your quality of life. You'll be meeting the requests of the community as per the community input. And now you are eligible for, if you adopt the plan, you'll be eligible to start applying for grants and start taking those bites out of this pie in the years to come. That's a lot of money. And with that, that's a lot. Do you have any questions?
Overwhelming.
It's overwhelming.
I believe you covered about every detail.
It's important, you know.
I think our 2 liaisons there did a good job.
No, I just want to say that a big focus for me personally was to I want to see the 4th of July back in the park. I want to see that grass area used maybe in the summertime for some concerts or some kind of festivals. I want to see kids, families, use more, utilize the creek. And they can float from there plumb into Franklin. And I think we underutilize our natural resources.
That's right. I agree.
So.
Yeah, and I'll second that. The ultimate goal here is, like you said, we have activities at Park Meadows with all the baseball, softball fields, and everything else. But as we were discussing this, we want to put new life into the Macon County Rec Park. I grew up in that park and spent many, many times, but the idea behind that park is to bring families back together and give them a place to picnic, kayak, play in the river, fish, whatever. But that's the ultimate goal in my mind is to give the families a place to go, a safe place to go.
I like the idea that phase 1 is off to, phase 1A is off to the side in an area that's not utilized now. Those bleachers are shot over there in the bathroom. Nobody, that's dead land right now. Now, you're talking about floodway. Is part of that?
You can't see in this drawing, but if you look at that phase 1A and you see that green paintbrush area, where it's not painted is literally the edge of the floodway through that section of the creek. So we just avoid it altogether here. You know, you've got some air, a little bit of it that goes into that parking area. I talked to my engineers. They said, no, you're not obstructing the flow. You'll be fine. It's when you start building walled structures that they start taking notice, and then you got to start getting into that long, expensive permitting process.
Is it floodway or flood zone?
Floodway.
That's a big deal.
It is. You want to avoid the floodway.
But most of it's in the flood zone.
The entire park is in a flood zone. It always has been.
And water now goes into that, it basically floods the parking lot. Every high water event we have. And then
It comes through that culvert backwards out of the
It comes through
river.
the culvert backwards and it goes out, but it stays in the parking area, and that's kind of how he designed it, was to stay off of the courts. And
I'll put a butterfly valve on that
Make it go one way, yeah.
one way valve.
I mean, interrupt. Is that, is the pavilion down by the tennis courts and the pickleball courts adequate for high school teams?
Yes.
Changing?
It is. It's about twice the size of what you would see in some of the areas that have a population.
Have you talked, did they have any, were they involved in any of this?
The public wanted.
No, the Franklin High School tennis team.
I had some folks who claimed to be from there. They weren't adults. They were students. Who'd say, man, that would be cool. Yeah. That's kind of the support I got.
I spoke to the high school
You
and the girls tennis coach, and they were big time.
The bathroom they've been changing in for
Yes.
years.
It's awful.
Smaller than my truck.
Yeah.
What are we doing? What are we looking at? Phase 1A?
So it's up to you
RFQ?
guys. Yeah. I think you need construction documents at this point. I think you would probably first want to adopt this plan and say that you acknowledge it. It does not commit you to building anything, but Part F will require that this be an adopted plan before we move forward.
Do we have to do an RFQ for architectural services?
Yeah, if we're gonna have construction documents, I think the first thing we would have to do is go seek an architect.
Or an engineering firm. I want to say a portion of your planning costs when you go into that phase can be reimbursed via Part F. But if you have your plan, it's not adopted when you make that decision, that doesn't count. So you have to adopt it first.
And, you know, we had 200,000 set aside in this year's budget for the pickleball court construction. So that money's sitting there, and, you know, I think it's a source of appropriate funding that we have in the budget to get this moving forward. Of course, we see that's not gonna be enough to cover the whole project, but it's certainly enough to get started.
Also in this plan, we asked not to duplicate what the town of Franklin was doing, and I think you did a very good job of, naturally, we need the playgrounds, the all-inclusive playgrounds, whether it be a small one, if the town of Franklin and a big one here, but it looks, I like this plan. You did a good job.
So really, we're looking to solicit an architect to design construction docks. Is that the next step?
Approving the plan.
Approve the plan.
Yeah. Is an engineer more appropriate or an architect?
I'm a little bit biased. Being a landscape architect, that works for a bunch of engineers. You can put an RFQ out there and see what kind of qualified individuals. You get to make the rules. We've certainly done this for 20 years. If you need assistance with an RFQ, let us know. An engineering firm is probably more appropriate because most of this is civil work.
And also, I'll have to say the 1A plan here, there's some fluff in this.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I'm gonna scare you now rather than scare you later, and I want to be a hero in the
And
future.
so, just to make that noted, that I think a few of those things are gonna definitely cost a lot less. But anyways, I like the plan. I make a motion, we adopt this plan as presented.
Second.
But, do we adopt the plan or that we put it out on RFQ?
No, we have to adopt the
We have to
plan.
adopt the
We're gonna
plan?
apply for Part F money, which is a substantial help to get this achieved.
And other grants.
Got to adopt
Okay.
the plan first.
Apologize, complete your motion.
No, I did. I just, the motion was to adopt this plan as presented.
Second.
Got a motion and a second, further discussion? All in favor signify by raising your right hand. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Second piece of, are we gonna do this RFQ
If you're
tonight?
ready,
You
I
wanna
guess it
make
just
some
depends on
ice cream?
how quickly y'all wanna get rolling, if you wanna,
I mean-
charge us to, prepare a request for qualifications and put it out there and see what we get back. Because of course, at that point, there's no money involved except for running ads in the paper, to do a request for qualifications.
No, I think we need to proceed with this. I mean, this tennis team, the pickleball, I mean, if it's phase one, we're not,
So y'all are interested in the RFQ to develop phase
Phase
1A?
1A.
phase 1A.
Okay, I think you need to probably make that in your motion, if you don't mind, whoever's gonna make the motion,
And an engineer,
just so we're all clear.
engineer or architect.
Yeah, just, we're
I
gonna
guess
put
we
out
can
a.
just put it out.
Professional
put it out
services.
for-
Professional services.
For RFQ.
We'll entertain a motion, gentlemen. If anybody's,
You two are the liaisons, right?
Gentlemen, I'd like to make a motion that we solicit an RFQ for the Macon County Recreation Park Master Plan Phase 1A.
I second that motion.
motion second on the floor, is there any further discussion? All in favor signify by raising your right hand. Unanimous, thank you, gentlemen.
We have a tournament for him, we got to go. Come out tomorrow and Park Madison and watch. Yeah, we're
All right, folks, continuing under old business, 9G, discussion and approval of the network design and build agreement for broadband services in Nantahala, Broadband Committee, Jeff Lee.
Is that a pickleball? Yes, I've never seen it.
We'll let everybody,
Clear out of here a little bit. I've never seen one.
That's an outdoor pickleball. They do make indoor pickleball.
That's a down
Smaller.
Yeah.
We'll get with you.
All right, here's Jeff.
No worries, no worries. Good evening, gentlemen. It's been a long evening so far, right?
Yeah, I'm ready to go. Ready to-
Anyways, I was before y'all back in July, and at that time, we'd brought to you a recommendation from the Broadband Committee to proceed to negotiate an agreement with Balsam West. They had developed a proposal that we were recommending to proceed with. And at that time, he gave us the approval to do so. Since that time, we also had a meeting in the Nantahala community. We had a good turnout from them, and we presented the information from the plan and what was proposed, and the community seemed very receptive. Commissioner Shields and Commissioner Higdon were both in attendance there, as well as Mr. Rowland, so it was a great meeting. To complete the project, we have completed a draft agreement with Balsam West, and we've worked through with Eric and with legal at Balsam West, and so we have in your packet, I believe, before you, a draft agreement, and I can go over the highlights here, and I can answer any questions you may have on the agreement. And what we're seeking tonight is we would like to approve this agreement and proceed to go execute and kickstart the project. But within this agreement, Balsam West pulled together everything that they had proposed to us, and under this project, they will construct and provide fiber connections to 5 county facilities in the Nantahala area. That includes Nantahala Fire on Wyatt, Nantahala Fire Substation on Winding Stair, Nantahala EMS on John Aluska, the new Library and Community Center on at White Oak and Wyatt, And lastly, the Nantahala Recreation Center. So that was included in that agreement and as part of the proposal. They've also given us a schedule commitment that they will, for activation of this new fiber network, 6 months from the signature of the agreement and permits received. So that's a pretty aggressive schedule, and we're pleased with that. After activation, their commitment is that fiber service will be offered to all interested residents and businesses within 500 feet of the fiber routes. Certainly the county is not paying for that. The county is paying for connection to the facilities, but this is in the spirit of partnership. Balsam has offered that and has embodied that in the agreement. What they're asking for is $350,000 as a non-recurring connection fee to help offset part of the construction costs. And they were actually able to come in a little bit less than what they had originally talked to us before. They had some other work going in the area, and they've been able to leverage some of that. That also helps them a lot with the time frame. So that's something we very much want to be able to take advantage of. And that $350,000 fee would be paid as a 50-50 payout, a 50% payment at the start, and then the final 50% upon activation of the network. There's also a one-time fee, which would be the annual internet service charge for the 5 facilities, and that would be paid under this agreement as a lump sum for the first year. But the county has the option then to split those recurring costs off after year 1. We can split it off into other agencies and other budgets to accommodate a recurring cost. And that's kind of the summary of the proposal and the agreement. Any questions?
Jim, appreciate what you've done, bringing the Nantahala community together into the picture there, bringing the people.
I actually thank Mr. Higdon for that, because he was able to give me some information, and I was able to reach out to some folks, and we were able to pull the community together and got a good reception from them.
It's a high-risk place for safety. This is, especially those five facilities that we're going to connect, county facilities, allowing that community to be on the start of the digital part.
Yes, sir. I mean, certainly the immediate goal is to provide better communication to each of these facilities. We're talking about public safety. And so providing better communication allows those facilities to be better plugged into the county as well as the community. By providing fiber service to each of these facilities, we can also offer a public hotspot in 5 locations within Nantahala, which is sorely needed right now. And then the other thing is, we needed to provide communication connection somehow for the new library and community center. So this certainly enables that. And then any services that Fontana needs they would negotiate separately with Balsam West. So once the connection's there, they provide a connection just like they do with all their other libraries.
Can you elaborate a little bit more?
Go ahead.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on the community center and the library? What about that piece? Is it going to be?
That's included as part of this agreement. That is one of the facilities. And essentially what the county will be providing is a fiber connection to that facility. And then as part of this one-time payment for year 1, we would cover the hotspot at that facility, because the library doesn't usually cover the hotspot at their facilities. That's usually provided by the provider or the county, depending on what the facility is. In the case of the library themselves, or Fontana Library, they have arrangements at each of their facilities where they actually provide a virtual connection back to their home base, their headquarters in Bryson City. And so they would do the same thing here. That fiber connection would enable them to do that. and provide all the services they provide at all the other libraries.
If you want to hear a little bit more about this, come to the noonday Rotary tomorrow. Jeff's our special guest.
Can,
All right.
Can you give me a breakdown of the fee schedule? How much did you tell me our tap fee is going to be for our 5 buildings?
So the fee schedule for year 1 was $9,552. And what we did is we broke down the service. What that is an extended cost of 12 months of service to each of the 5 facilities. Okay. And I actually sat down with the Warren and some of the fire folks to talk about how much service they need. I talked to the library folks. So what we were able to do is kind of work down, rather than supplying a full gigabit of service in each facility, which isn't technically needed. We were able to kind of work that number down a little bit, and a little less than what they were showing.
I have $350,000 that you mentioned with.
Yes, sir. That's the non-recurring cost for them to essentially construct the fiber to reach each of the 5 facilities.
So we're essentially paying for construction, is what that is. I'm just trying to clarify what this is. I'm not grilling you.
Yes.
That money is to build the lines.
That is to partially fund the building of those lines.
Partially fund building the lines.
It would actually, if we were paying the full cost of that, we'd probably be paying quite a bit more.
But when we do that funding and this project is complete, all of our facilities are hooked up. The lines aren't partially built. We're building out all the way to our facilities with this $350,000.
That's correct. It helps supplement the construction costs to enable connections to each of those facilities.
And Boston West is doing the other part. It's a 50-50.
They have another project that they're working on in the area, and so there are additional things that they need to be able to support our facilities, and there's additional cost associated with those. And so the way it's broken out in the agreement is that's just a single non-recurring construction fee or...
It's the same way we set up the schedule on the South Macon project. We did half the funding to start and then half on.
That's in terms of the payment, yeah.
Okay.
And then once that is constructed, all the emergency service buildings, then the residents in that area tap onto this.
Correct. Correct. So that once that activation occurs and those buildings are connected and active, they will begin offering service to anybody within 500 feet. And the 500 feet is not a magic number. They will offer service to those that are farther out. But what they're offering here is they would offer that at no cost to those that are closer. If you're 2,500 feet up a mountain, it's going to cost considerably more. So, did you have an additional question?
Yes.
Yes.
I think I remember it. So, Boston West, this is their infrastructure, right? Even though we're contributing $350,000, it is theirs, they own it.
Correct.
Okay. I just need that clarification, because if you as a board decide to approve this agreement, we have money budgeted in Fund 55, the Nantahala Library Community Building Fund project that was transferred from the general fund a few years ago to Fund 55, but Fund 55 is our capital. So if you take action tonight to approve this agreement, you'll also need to approve a budget amendment to move $350,000 from that Fund 55 back to general fund, which is Fund 11. It's just, I just needed that clarification for accounting. Again, if it was our infrastructure, it stays in Fund 55, just like the actual building and the renovations is our facility, is our asset. But in this case, this is not our assets.
And
so we need to pay for them out of the general fund, like we did the other project with Boston.
And legally, Macon County is not allowed to own that as an
Right.
asset. Right. So
I
it
just
can't be
wanted-
our asset.
I wanted that clarification to make sure we start off right with this. You know, if you approve it tonight, that you also approve that budget amendment for me. I'll be glad to repeat it if whoever makes the motion.
Paraphrase that a little bit.
Any other questions from the board?
No, I think we're ready. Appreciate what you've done on this thing. You convinced me. First, I was a skeptic in Nantahala about this.
Well, the residents in Nantahala, when we met over there, they
were skeptical.
They wanted reliable cell service, and now all of a sudden, what you did, the folks in Nantahala are very excited about.
Excited about it.
Yes.
Let's understand that, and And thank you for what you've done too. I know you're getting paid, but doesn't hurt to get a little slap on the back once in a while.
I appreciate that.
Thank you. You did a good job on this, Jeff.
Thank you.
And we do
Jeff, did you
appreciate it.
mention the estimated completion date and I missed it, or?
The date would be based on when the agreement is signed and then when permits are received. And so they've begun some permitting work on their other project, and so that'll help us. But there's still additional permits that they would have to secure. And what they've committed within the agreement is 6 months from receipt of the execution of the agreement and the permits. Yeah.
All right, gentlemen. What's the pleasure of the board?
I think I'm making a motion, I'm gonna need some help. Make a motion approval of the network design and build agreement for broadband services in Nallahara.
And
And
a budget amendment to transfer $350,000 from Fund 55 county capital projects to Fund 11 general fund.
did you get that?
I do have one question, and this is for you before you
Yes.
finish the motion. As part of the agreement, that first year of service, that 950,
9,552.
yes, that is also included as, that would be a lump sum payment upon activation. Does that need to come out of the same budget, or is that something completely different?
That's going to be recurring. That really needs to come out of, we'll just take that as contingency when the time comes, I would think.
Yeah.
Is that okay with you guys?
Yeah, and they split it
Because
up.
that's going to be an annual recurring bill,
We'll have
correct?
to work in the operating budget.
Yeah.
It will, and that can be split up later.
Could be split up
Yeah.
later.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that it needs to be
Yeah.
included.
Tammy,
Okay.
you got it.
All right, we got somewhat of a motion on the floor.
You want her to read it? She's got it.
Tammy's got it.
Trust that Tammy and Laura will not leave anything
That's right.
out of line. We have a second?
I'll second that motion, Chairman.
Any further discussion?
I would just like to say, again, thanks to Jeff. He's really worked hard
Yeah.
for us to get this put together. And his funding actually ran out a long time ago, but he stayed on with us. When the first RFP, when we couldn't do it and had to go back to the drawing board, pretty much that was when the funding had dried up. But Jeff stayed on with this thing, never asked any questions, never asked anything, and kept working for us to get it done and get it revised. And
Wow.
that says a lot about Jeff, and I just would like to remind the board that as this project gets started and as these great grants start coming to fruition and we start having this broadband expansion, it's going to be more and more important to have that the expertise that Jeff brings to the table. So I just want the board to be thinking about that as we move forward.
Absolutely. Hey, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you,
All right, a
Jeff.
motion is second. All in favor, signify by raising your right hand. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Jeff. Okay, new business. Resolution declaring September as Preparedness Month. County Manager.
Yes, just very quickly, Mr. Chairman, September, every year, National Preparedness Month is observed in September, and it's just mainly raising the awareness of counties across the state about preparing for disasters. Of course, this particular theme for this National Preparedness Month is preparing for older adults. This resolution just says that the Macon County Board of Commissioners recognizes this and declares September of 2023 as National Preparedness Month and observes that here in Macon County.
We'll entertain a motion. You leaving, Tom? We'll entertain a motion.
Gentlemen, I'll make a motion. We declare September 23rd,
2023, is that?
2023.
23rd or- Okay,
National Preparation
second,
Month.
second, Mr. Chairman, or
Got a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor, raise your right hand.
Been here a long time.
How you got it, brother? All right, thank you, guys. 10C, consideration and approval of a resolution providing, consideration and approval of grant-funded positions addendum to the county personnel policy. HR Director and Clerk to the Board, Tammy Kaiser.
Yeah, thank you, gentlemen. So last month, when John Fay presented his information about the grants for the housing department, the question came up about, did we have a policy about employees who were hired with grant funding to pay for their position. And so we have created this policy as an addendum to our current personnel policy to clarify that if a position is grant funded, that if that funding goes away, the position goes away at that point in time.
Well, thank you for putting that in writing.
Yeah, she's done an excellent job.
I was impressed. That's needed to have been done a long time ago. Thank you for that, Tammy.
So I need
All
a
right, Jim.
motion to approve that, please.
Well, there's, I probably won't find it, but in there, in the benefits, Tammy, it says that, if I only knew where it was at. Do you have that in front of you?
I do have it in front of me.
It's talking about that these employees are entitled to all benefits of county employees, full-time county employees, which, how is that paid?
It's only if the grant funds it.
Okay, so the grant, so there's absolute, okay.
Gentlemen?
All right, let me take a stab at making a motion here.
All right.
To approve the grant-funded positions addendum to the county personnel policies, all right? All right.
I'll second that.
Have a motion second, further discussion? All in favor signify by raising your right hand.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Tammy. Great eye, good catch there. Consideration and approval of resolution providing for electronic listing and extending the time for filing electronic listings of personal property for property tax relief. Abby Braswell,
Good evening.
Tax Administrator. Welcome, Abby.
Thank you for allowing me to come before you tonight. I'm coming before you tonight to request for the Macon County Board of Commissioners to approve a resolution to authorize personal property listing to be submitted and signed electronically. According to General Statute 105-301-1A, it states that personal property may be electronically listed. General Statute 105-301.1B states that the North Carolina Department of Revenue has established a set of standards and requirements for electronic listing. Macon County now meets these standards and requirements for electronic listing. General Statute 105-310.1C says the Board of County Commissioners may, by resolution, provide for electronic listing of personal property in accordance with the standards and requirements prescribed by the Department of Revenue, and the Board of County Commissioners may, by resolution, delegate its authority to provide for electronic listing of personal property to the county assessor. So I am requesting for you to approve the resolution that I included in the agenda. Would you like me to read the resolution?
No.
Well, can you just explain it to me in layman's terms?
Okay, so right now, in January, we send out listing forms to any business or any person who has personal property, mobile homes, boats, airplanes, campers, farm equipment, things like that. This is going to allow, like, Kmart, or actually Kmart's not here anymore, my only wish. Walmart, Taco Bell, McDonald's, any business. And eventually, we're gonna start with the business listings. So what happens is, like when we did the appeals online, people went online to our website, they logged into a portal, put in an item number, an account number, document number that says, this is our number, we're filing electronically, and it goes directly into our software. Those documents get uploaded into our system, it gets attached to the actual account, so the person in my office does not have to scan those papers. They don't send them in, you cannot, and by the resolution, it says that we do not accept them emailed, by fax machine, those are not considered online. It will be through our online portal. That's what the electronic listing means, that they're going to go onto our website and upload their documents to us.
But they can still bring them in and hand them to you?
They can, if they wish, or mail them in.
Or mail them.
Yes.
So this is just another option to make it easier for people to access your portal?
All businesses right now, the bigger businesses, are used to online listing with a lot of other counties. So that's what they're normally wanting to do. So right now, a lot of them will email. per this document, we are not gonna accept emails as online listing because we're actually gonna offer a portal. So I'll get to that. Our software, our new software that we have, they don't charge us for this portal. They don't charge us to actually make this. It's something they have that they're gonna implement, and just like they did with our online appeals, they're not gonna charge us to put that onto our software. It's free. It's part of their software. It's just something that we request and they do. So it doesn't cost anything to the county for anything. No software cost whatsoever.
Then I'd like to make a motion that we implement the resolution providing for the electronic listing and extending time for filing electronic listings of personal property for the property tax reports. Did that cover it? What is it?
Next part's easy. Need a second, gentlemen. I'll second.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Now, any discussion?
Yeah, is there any downfall to this?
No.
No.
It's just computer age. I'm not a techie.
It's just an easier way to receive the data. As you know, a lot of things get lost in the mail. A lot of corporations now are sending things, FedEx, they're getting documents to save. I mean, it saves them money, which makes them happy. It helps our office obtain these documents in a timely manner. And it eases, we don't have paper. We don't have to store any more paper. It all gets uploaded into the system. So it's a win-win for everybody with no cost to the county.
We like that.
Yes.
All right. Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by raising your right hand. Thank you, gentlemen. You always seem to get last. Why's that? You just like these meetings, I guess.
We take saving the best for last, seriously.
Okay, good deal.
She
Why
don't
not?
send her
That's
information
there.
in on a timely manner.
Thank you,
Actually,
Abby.
I think this time I was first, wasn't I? I came in on a day off to submit my things for the agenda.
Thank you, Abby.
Thank you.
You'll always be first in our minds, girl.
You got it.
That is actually very honorable because y'all are very hard board to please. And I've got a very hard job.
Oh, now that is a compliment.
Y'all are very hard board to please. I mean,
All right, Abby. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Yeah, good night.
well, I'm staying for just a little bit.
Okay. Item 11, consent agenda. We can either do these all but one. I hope everybody's read their document and reviewed these documents. Is there anything there that sticks out? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as a body.
So moved, Chairman.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by raising your right hand. And that included 9F. Do we have any appointments, Mr. Chairman? Good.
You are, Mr. Chairman.
I mean, Mr. Manager. You can have a chairmanship. I'm tired. I want out of here. Closed session,
I can actually do this in open session.
pardon?
I can do this last one in open session. I can do this in open session, we don't have to.
You can, since there's nobody here, let's do it.
Okay, so on the old Pine Grove School, which is on the intersection there at Peach Creek, we have an offer to purchase that for $70,950. It's generally been the board's position that in order to entertain an offer, it needs to be the tax value, and I believe that was the tax value when the offer was made. Since we've now done the revaluation, that tax value has now gone up to $102,910. So it's up to the board to decide whether you want to entertain that price. If so, we'll publish it in the paper, it's subject to upset bid. We can go back to this individual and say you'd like to have a higher value or the current tax appraised value. It's all in your discretion as to how you want to do that, or if you wanted to, I mean, there may be discussion that the Peaks or the old Pine Grove School be kept for some reason. That's all up to the board.
That is on the National Historic Register, right, John? Just FYI.
No, I think we asked for the tax value.
We don't use it for anything. I mean, it took him, it's a job to get the title cleaned up, deed. It's not a polling place anymore. What's the purpose of I mean, it is a historic building, but what is the purpose?
Is that for the reval, John, or?
No, that's the day reval. The old, I'm assuming the offer was what the former tax value was.
Yeah.
And they put the offer in for that value, but since then, the values have gone up.
But do we want to go back to the time that they looked into it, the 70,000 and 950?
No.
You don't want to?
I mean, if we're gonna get fair market value, I mean, well, we shouldn't.
We have a precedent to operate off of here. I mean, it's generally the appraised value or tax value.
But that was the 70,000 and 950 was a fair market value a
At the
year
time.
ago.
Yes, at the time.
At the time that this person pursued it.
And now, since then, the reval's come in and it's gone up $30,000 in value or whatever. And I think the process is fair market value. And according to tax records, its fair market value is 105.
102,900.
I make a motion, we reject that bid.
I'll second that.
All right, any further discussion, gentlemen?
Chairman, as you noted, we're working on precedents here, and to me, it's unfair to have a property assessed and sell taxpayers' property undervalued. I'm not qualified to make that judgment, so I hate the fact that time got in the way here. At this point in time, I can't in good faith sell it undervalued.
But it took time just to clear the deeds up on it, so. All right.
We paid maintenance last year to take out a lot of vegetation around the building. I'm sure they've had to keep it clean and keep it washed and keep it gravelled, and we've got money tied up in it. Insurance.
All right, gentlemen, all in favor of the motion and the second, signify by raising your right hand. Thank you, gentlemen. All right, is that it?
That's all I have.
Mr. Manager, anything?
No, sir.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Thank y'all for being here and hanging through. We'll do it again next month.
4 hours. How many hours?